Hello and welcome to the Genesis of Androzani Marvel reviews. This week we are starting a new series because obviously we are finishing off our Spider-Man series next week with Far From Home. This week we are starting the X-Men films, starting with the first X-Men film from 2000. And we have Callum here.
Oh,
and no one else because Anthony's busy. And yeah, but before we get into all that, patreon.com/Genesis of Androzani. If you'd like to contribute to the channel, we have early access, exclusive access, and requesting videos for us to do. Twitter.com/Androzani if you'd like to check out what we're talking about, who we're bantering with, and if you just like to get in contact with us. Okay, X-Men. Now, this is a film that I have seen before. I think before this viewing, I think I would have seen it at least twice, maybe even three times. I know I saw it in 2008 with a friend on a DVD, and then I saw it again on TV, I think in 2013 as well. So it's been probably 6 years since I've seen it. But I do remember a lot from it. So watching it again, it wasn't like a Spider-Man 1 and 2 and 3 where there was a lot that I couldn't.
you muddled them all together.
Yeah,
a little bit.
But with with especially this first one, I remember a lot from it because I've seen it multiple times. So yeah, there was and definitely the imagery I would say I remember. But obviously you've seen Deadpool films and you've also seen Logan. But apart from that,
that's it.
Apart from that, you haven't seen any actual X-Men group films, have you?
There are only a couple of specific clips that I've seen, but I have not seen any of the main X-Men films in full, apart from Logan, as that's a very important X-Men film.
So
other than that, I haven't seen them in one whole sitting.
So I feel like with this one, you're going to be like what I was with the MCU. We've only seen a few of them. Because I had only seen Avengers: Homecoming and Infinity War before I did the marathon, which was three sort of big films, I guess. They are big films. Yeah. And obviously you've only seen Deadpool 1, 2, and Logan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, and I'm pretty sure. I mean, hopefully Anthony's on more of these. I'm pretty sure he's seen all of them. So he's probably going to be the big master of these reviews. Unfortunately, he's not here today. But yeah, I have seen X-Men 1, 2, 3, The Wolverine, and possibly one more. I can't remember if I have seen one more actually. I don't think I have. Yeah, no, I think that's it. X-Men 1, 2, and 3, and The Wolverine. I think is the only ones I've seen. But I am aware of some of the things in the films that I haven't seen. But yeah, so hopefully when Anthony gets back, he can sort of lead the charge a bit more. But for now, it's okay because I'm fully aware of the original trilogy, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So with that being said, give your 2-minute initial thoughts on this film, X-Men.
Right, so X-Men, obviously, like we've mentioned, that this is my first time fully viewing this film, so I had no idea what to expect going into it, because I can't remember whether this film is extremely loved or it's just liked. I know it's not hated like a couple of the X-Men films are, so I had no idea how I was going to feel, and I think watching it was very odd because it was quite a different sort of superhero film that I've sort of experienced. It's very different tonally from anything else I've seen in Marvel or DC. So I think I did like it, but I felt that I was not as invested as I had hoped I'd be. I think there were moments in certain characters that I did like and really liked, but I think as a whole, as a film, I thought it was just an okay experience, nothing particularly bad, but wishing there was something else to it that really could have got me hooked into the film. Because I don't think this is a bad film, but it doesn't feel like it connected with me, really. I think that's sort of the feeling I have on it.
Yeah, so my feelings are kind of similar. I think this film has a lot of strange juxtapositions in its quality, in the sense that it is derived from legendary source material. The X-Men comics are some of the most popular.
Yeah.
Particularly, yeah. So the X-Men comics are. So this film, X-Men, has a juxtaposition in its quality because I think the characters and the casting for this, especially, was fantastic. That was really, really, really good. I thought they cast a lot, maybe not all, but most of the key characters for this franchise, especially characters like Wolverine and Magneto and Professor X, I think were really well cast. And there are definitely highlights to this film, but unfortunately, I think the story and the tone were mishandled, and that lets it down. And it's mainly to do with the fact that one of the things that makes X-Men comics so appealing is how colorful it is. It's not colorful like Guardians of the Galaxy is. It's not like that colorful, but it has a sort of the original costumes, the yellow and black stripes, the sort of you see there's the meme of Wolverine sitting on his bed with the picture. Like it's very, very colorful and very. I feel like this film would have been a lot better had it had some of that. I'm not necessarily meme quality, but it just. I feel like a lot of the charm of this comes from the actors ad-libbing, and the direction of it is very serious and quite straight-faced. And I feel like this film would have been better had they just made it a bit more, fun, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Like, this film is like it's this very understood, structured plot. It's very easy to follow, but there's not much fun to be had with it. There's not much. Not saying it needs to be like an MCU film where it's got quite a bit of comedy in it or anything like that.
Yeah.
It just feels like it's very dragged in total seriousness. Like every moment is almost completely serious, apart from a few lines. I think mainly with Logan as a character who is quite different from the rest of the characters. So he has this sort of like, don't know what the word would be, but he's definitely like the way he interacts with everybody is quite different and sometimes quite hilarious. But I feel like the actual tone of the film felt quite not dull, but not exciting in terms of like getting you hooked into the film.
I also think this film has some issues with its storytelling. It's quite the pacing and the way it's edited is very choppy, and scenes don't blend into each other very well. It's quite it was quite annoying because what they would do is there were these long elaborate scenes that they had filmed, and what they would do is they would just cut in the middle of them and paste them all together. And I suppose the attempt is to try and balance out the screen time between each storyline, but it's just the way it's all pieced together doesn't feel natural, and there's a lot of very strange time jumps that aren't done very well. There isn't the right pause time. There aren't the right some of the establishing shots in this film are pretty garbage. Like they just don't look right and they don't fit in. The flow isn't correct. And I find that by the time we get to the climax of the film, there isn't enough momentum built up for it to be exciting. It just sort of happens, and it's unfortunate because this I feel like this film had the pieces that it could have been something better. That's my sort of feeling.
I feel an example of a section which feels very choppy in its editing and sort of way the scene is structured, I think, is the fight scene in the museum was the biggest thing for me, where it felt a bit all over the place. Like one thing would happen, but it didn't feel like it would naturally flow into another. It felt like the whole scene was over, but then kept going. But then once it ended, it felt like it was going to keep going and stuff like that. It was just very weirdly chopped together and structured. just made it feel like didn't know how to feel about it as it was happening. So for me, I think that's the biggest example of something that's in this film that feels very choppy and poorly structured, not to make it not flow properly.
Yeah, and I feel like again, sometimes what makes a film like this have a good structure and a good flow tends to be how it handles the comedic dialogue. And I was thinking as I was watching it, I was thinking, looking at some of the shots and some of where the story was going. I was thinking of I was thinking about the film Johnny English, and how that film transitions, and film came out around the same time as this one, just maybe a little bit after.
Yeah.
That film's structure and plot is actually kind of similar to this one in terms of where it's paced and everything. Maybe it's a bit shorter, but the actual delivery of each scene, one after the other, is much smoother, and a lot of it has to do with the comedic tone, which really helps bounce scenes together. And I feel like the comedic tone in this film is very spontaneous, and it doesn't benefit the structure of the film. It's more just one-off, haha, funny. Anyway, let's not muck around because we've gone through 12 minutes without even starting on any characters. Logan, aka Wolverine.
Probably my favorite character in the film, for me personally, I think. And I think that's because of Hugh Jackman's sort of performance and the way he conducts himself as Wolverine. He feels very much like, even from only watching one film with him as Logan, felt like, you can see the natural progression of that character if you watch that film and that film. I think Hugh Jackman is pretty much perfectly casted. I think it was a great choice to play Wolverine. I think he's definitely one of the better actors in this film, because I think there's a couple characters I feel like their acting skills aren't as good as others, and Hugh Jackman is definitely one of the highlights of the film for me. I think he's the most character in a sense you can relate to, even with him being a mutant. He's very much, because he feels different, he feels like he distanced himself, especially at the start of the film in the bar as well, I think. And then, but slowly as the film goes on, where he's taking care of this girl who's also a mutant, so someone who he can sort of relate to himself, you can see the natural progression of him starting to care for someone, just as a person, as someone who's similar to him. So that's quite a nice arc that he goes on, I think, and sort of work within a team / family in a sense, because it feels like this is more like a family instead of just like a team. You get that sort of feeling from it. They never outright say it though, which I quite like. They just let it sort of simmer around each other. But yeah, I think Hugh Jackman does a great job, and Wolverine is a very fun character to watch in action scenes, especially because he's very different from everybody else.
Honestly, I think even though he is the lead of this film, I honestly think he's actually slightly underused. And I think I say that mainly because every scene that he was in, I wanted more of him.
Yeah,
and it doesn't feel like we get enough, because this film tends to sort of focus on, this is a team.
Yeah.
But I wish that there was more focus on him, because his captivating quality as a lead, I would compare it to guys like Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans and those kind of actors that have that they have that real attachment quality to them that you get instantly, and every scene they're in, you want to see what happens next. And yeah, Wolverine is a very, very good character, and he was the perfect cast for this film. And it just upsets me because I wish that the story around him was more interesting, because he himself is very interesting.
Yeah, it does feel like that. The plot sort of happens around him is one that I will say. I think that he seems like he reacts to things a lot in terms of what went on around him in this film. And while he was great, it would have been nice for him to have more of a focused role. Though he has a clear arc, but I just felt like he could have had a bit more to do, I think. Because I think I do agree that he just
there's a
sort
lot
of
of
reacts to
scenes.
stuff around him.
There's a lot of scenes where he almost feels like a secondary character, and that's wrong. He shouldn't.
It feels like
Like,
that a lot gets explained to him as well,
mm.
while everyone else sort of understands.
Yeah, and but the one scene that I always remember since I first watched it that's always stuck out to me in my mind is the scene where he's driving his car, and then he crashes and flies out. Like I always remember that scene very distinctly because of not just the scene itself, but the imagery and the dialogue. I think it's one of the better scenes in the whole film, honestly. And I'd also lump in his like the cage fighting scenes of them as well, are very distinct in my mind. I just think once his whole character gets established and he becomes part of the plot, it kind of has this. It's not terrible, but it kind of there's kind of this problem that you get with some superhero films is when the character development is finished, it sort of turns into a sort of it sort of coasts along with him because he's sort of just part of the team now, and it's yeah, it is a little bit annoying. Again, like I said, I think he should have been utilized more as a lead. Like it's similar to how Iron Man was used in Phase One of the MCU. I feel like that's a good comparison to make because when you watch the Avengers, like he is very clearly the lead, and I feel like like Hugh Jackman should have had that quality to him in this film. Whereas I feel like a lot of this film tries to balance all the characters, and most of them aren't as interesting as he is.
Yeah.
But he is a fantastic character nonetheless. I think
yeah.
I think the way that they explain his mutation is actually very, very good. Though the exposition surrounding the fact that he has the power to heal himself,
Yeah.
but then somebody somewhere, we obviously only see flashes of it, but we don't know. But somebody had given, like, they surgically put all this metallic plate inside of him, and that's why he has the blades. So it's almost like he's been engineered to be a fighter, but he
Yeah.
doesn't know why, and he doesn't remember it.
No. Yeah, that's quite an interesting like sort of plot for him, and that's sort of a mystery that you can sort of link with him, find get interested in him as a character, and it's something that can be resolved in future films, I think. And I think they do that quite well. And I do think the explanation for him, how his powers isn't his claws, is the fact that his natural power is that he can heal from any fatal injuries, which is
Yeah,
very interesting. And how
that's
it's sort of
that is
like a
much.
curse that he's
It's
been
much,
given
yeah,
with these claws.
exactly. It's much more creative than just having his power be "Grr, I have claws," which is what some
Yeah.
people think it genuinely is, but it's not.
I wasn't sure. Always thought, I think, before properly watching this film, I was like, oh, he just has a metal skeleton and claws and stuff and can heal. But so I never understood fully because I didn't watch a lot of X-Men stuff when I was younger. Never fully understood what his character powers was apart from that. So now that I know, it's way more interesting for not just for stunts and stuff like that, as a character and learning as a character, it's so much more interesting than I thought it'd be. Because
Yeah,
I like now I want to know why he was made this way and who did it to him and is he going to discover it and stuff like that. So it's very interesting to
yeah,
learn about
um,
that and think for future
yeah.
stuff.
I'll be interested to see what you think because obviously you've seen Logan and I haven't, but I am aware of what Logan is about. But I have seen the film, The Wolverine, which is
Mhm.
kind of it's hard to explain where it is in the timeline, but I'm sure when we get to it, we'll be able to sort of piece it together. But
Mhm.
I remember because I only saw it once, and it was in theaters, and it was about 8 years ago when I saw it. But when I did, I really liked how it focused more just around him rather than a team, because he is
Mhm.
such an interesting character, even by himself.
Yeah, by himself, he's so like just
Yeah,
instantly you're invested in him as a character by
yeah,
himself. So I think him by himself is way more interesting than him as a team because if it feels like there's more development for him to have, and that's why like Logan is as good as it is because it's basically a 3-person main cast, which gives him more development. And I think, and obviously that's quite hard to do to make something like that work. But obviously the writers did it so well in Logan, which makes the character way more interesting.
Yeah, and
But
also
I think they do a good job in here with him in this film. It's just there's a bunch of characters they also need to establish.
Yeah, and also from an aesthetics point of view, he looks exactly the same as the comics, which is just it's one of those things that when you get that right, it's one of those blessings that comic book fans want.
Yeah, definitely. It's like he pretty much has to look down the hair
like that,
and the
like
sort of beard.
that first shot of him with his eyebrows like that, like it's like that is comic book Wolverine right there. You buy it straight away. And I really, really like the scene in the bar when that guy wants his money. Like that's a really good scene, I reckon.
Yeah, that's it. When the claw comes out, of the middle part of his claw comes out. That's the effect on that, and like the design of that is so cool. And so like that's how it would work if it was real.
Yeah,
and it's still so natural.
Yeah, like I would say, like I mean, obviously we'll get onto the details and stuff, but I would say just before I forget, some of the CGI in this film is quite dated, but in terms of practical effects, all of the practical effects look really good, including the claws. Like that, everything to do with the claws is very well done. It's to the point where it's iconic.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah, like Wolverine's claws is like the equivalent of like Iron Man's arc reactor. It's like one of those things. It's one of those things you have to get right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. It's like it's very much the look, which is so important. I feel like for a character like Wolverine, and I feel like they did a great job with the design of him and how they made Hugh Jackman actually look as well with the hair and the sort of way he's built and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's very well done, I would say.
And of course, the sideburns with no goatee as well. It's like it's become like if anyone ever has that facial hair now, it's like, yep, you look like Wolverine. Like everyone in the world knows that look.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. It's a very specific kind of look, which everyone would relate it to. So yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Wolverine, fantastic. Wish there was more of him. Wish the story around him was better because, like, I think that character, in any of the films he's in, has the high potential and is almost always the best part of everything he's in. So,
oh yeah,
it's just like Robert Downey Jr. in the Iron Man films. Like all three of those films, I have a lot of flaws with. I like them all, but I have a lot of flaws with them as films. But Iron Man in them is always great, and it's the same. It's the same thing with Wolverine in the X-Men films. Regardless of what film it is, he's always great in them.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah. So I again like to give this film credit, the one thing that they nailed was his character. I would say.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think he's the most like well put together character, I think. I would say so.
Yeah, because if you got him wrong, then this franchise probably wouldn't have come off the ground like it did.
No.
Like we were talking before about Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man and like how messing up the main character completely derails the whole series.
Yeah, definitely. Like you need to get one of the more popular characters right. If you don't, then no one's going to be interested. Because if they'll feel like that if there's not enough care put into one of the more popular characters, then why should anybody bother with the others? So it's so important that you get a good main character right. Otherwise, the whole thing falls flat.
Yep. Yeah, because like imagine Infinity War with a different actor playing Thanos. I just can't imagine. It would be the parallel universe where that's true is horrible. Again, yeah. So casting is essential, always essential casting. And to this film's credit, I think like the most important roles, I think they did an okay job with. Some of them aren't particularly great, but in terms of I would say the first three names we're going to be talking about, I think they were the exact cast that they needed to get. And Hugh Jackman especially, I think, is the standout in terms of casting.
I would say so. Yeah.
Right. So then we move on to the next character, which is Charles Xavier, aka Professor X, played by Patrick Stewart.
What is a very like an amazing actor with a role so suited to him, I would say.
Mm,
Like much like Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, when you think of Professor X, you think of Patrick Stewart, his sort of look and the way he sort of conducts himself when he's performing as Professor X. It's just so natural, and I would say that he's very much one of the more calm characters, more collective than anybody else, and you feel that sort of presence about him that
mm,
he is the one character that everybody sort of listens to and reasons with and
yeah.
never doubts. So and you get that sort of feeling from him from his dialogue and the way he performs, I would say Patrick Stewart. So I think it's again another great casting choice.
Yeah. Well, one thing I love about him is like one of the issues that I have with this film is how it delivers some of its exposition, but I think his exposition is always the best because of the way he goes about it. It just
Mm,
makes it sound so interesting. The way that the character talks about the mutants and like
yeah,
explains to the audience how it all works, I think is fantastic.
I
Um,
think so, yeah, I would agree.
and as a kid, I was always mesmerized by the scenes in like the room, like the big dome room. Um, Even though like now the CGI looks a bit aged, in terms of just as a visual, like the CGI dome room with him in it's one of those memorable sets, I would say.
Yeah, definitely, I would say.
Yeah, and it had just his whole backstory with Magneto as well is very interesting.
Mm.
How they
Oh yeah,
they
that's very interesting. I like that a lot.
yeah, like how they came, like they sort of created this place together, but then Magneto obviously they went separate ways,
Hmm.
and also his superpower as well. I think I was talking about the scene with the car crash, which was I was saying was my favorite scene, but I actually now that I think about it, I think my favorite scene in this film is when Magneto has the guns pointed at all those policemen, and
Mm,
then Professor X controls Magneto's like henchmen as like
yeah,
choking him, and then like they're like talking to each other through mind like telekinesis,
yeah.
and then
I like the way that scene is cut between Professor X and Sabretooth.
yeah,
That's so nicely cut together, I would say.
yeah. I love the fact that Magneto like knows his weaknesses. He knows Professor X's weaknesses and like what
Mm,
what he won't like will and won't do.
yeah, he's sort of his like care for humanity is always going to be someone's weakness,
Yeah,
someone that caring, and obviously Magneto uses that against him.
yeah, and also
It's not
like the
even not even power related. It's like humanity related. This is
yeah,
quite interesting.
and like the symbolism of the final scene when they're playing chess together.
Mm.
It's yeah, that stuff's all wonderful. I think Professor X is a brilliant character, and again, perfect casting.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, Patrick Stewart's just one of those actors that never ages either. Like you look at him
No,
in Star, you
like
look at him in Star Trek, you look at him in X-Men, and then you look at him now, and he looks the exact same.
yeah, like this was 19 years ago. Probably this was filmed 20 years ago. So
Mm,
like, and he feels like he just looks the same. Never feels like his like sort of structure like changes. It's so
yeah,
odd, but like great for like all his roles. He's like looks exactly the same and everything.
yeah, and yeah, I just love how aware he is of everything.
Mm,
Aside from obviously Magneto, because Magneto's helmet blocks him from using his powers against him. Um,
yeah,
but in terms of just the way he handles Logan, when Logan comes to the school, and like I love the scene where he runs into the room and he's just like, "Oh, hello, Logan," like as if he knew he was expecting him to be there.
yeah. I like that. It's like the way he just sort of interacts with every character. You sense the sort of calmness he has and the way he cares for each character, and you can feel like the characters responding to that, they feel it as well. It's very nice, and I think he does a very, very good job at performing as Professor Rex, and it's so convincing. It's like, again, perfect casting. You don't really think of anybody else could play that role. You feel like, yeah, that is what he would look like.
Yeah. Yeah, again, just what more can you say than that? Like, it's just a lot of this film has a lot of setup in it, and one of the best parts is how it just introduces him as a character and his story with the mutants and the Magneto and his interactions with Wolverine. It's all very, very interesting stuff that, yeah, and yeah, I just, again, similar to Hugh Jackman, he's one of those actors that every time he's on screen, you're just wanting to see what he does next.
Yeah. Definitely.
And then the other big sort of character in terms of casting for me is Eric Lehnsherr, aka Magneto, played by Sir Ian McKellen.
Again, another great casting choice.
Yeah.
Like, the main three characters, I'll say, is those three.
Yeah.
And all of them are casted great, and their performances are all great as well.
Yeah.
Ian McKellen is like so good as Magneto.
Yeah.
He's so good. The way he conducts himself, his dialogue is great.
Yeah.
And the way he speaks his dialogue is just so like bad guy, but so understanding what he's coming from, where he's coming from. Even though he's like a bad guy in this film, you understand what he's trying to do and the reason why he does it, even though it's wrong.
Yeah.
So,
like, you would think that a film with those three as the top cast, you would expect it to be top tier because they are top tier actors and they are perfectly cast.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And again, it just frustrates me that the story isn't as interesting as what it should be because these characters are so good.
Yeah. It just feels the plot just feels like quite basic in a sense, like just trying to turn every human into a mutant so that they understand us. And that's sort of it. The mystery they sort of try to weave around it, where they originally think that they want Logan, that he wants Logan, but then it turns out that they want this other character. It felt like that was like, oh, okay. I don't know. It just felt like why I just didn't. In a sense, I don't understand why they would just think that he just would want Logan.
Yeah.
I feel like that's not set out great because it feels like it's quite one-minded in a sense, just from the character's perspective.
Yeah. Or I just don't think it's quite explained in full, and that
I
might
don't
be
think so,
that
yeah.
again. It might be because this is sort of just an introduction to X-Men. But again, like, just as a standalone film, it does feel, if you're just leaving this alone, it does feel a little bit doesn't quite get to the potential that it could have. I would say that the very start of the film has some interesting ideas, like the whole political debate in the room at the very beginning of the film, where
that's quite interesting.
There's that guy who was talking about, should we allow mutants free because they are dangerous? And it's a very good political debate, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
Because you, in a sense, you understand both sides. In a sense, even though you're like, well, not all. I can only assume that not all mutants would be bad people, but you do understand why there would be people that would want every single mutant to come out legally. So, like, you understand both sides. It's just the way the people who are wanting these mutants to come out, it's the way they conduct it, and though their sort of reasonings for it, they're quite one-minded, one-sided.
And that's quite a dark point of view on a superhero film, because it's in most, like, for example, with like the Avengers, the public were like, yes, these people are gonna save our lives, whereas with the mutants, it's like these people are the danger.
Yeah,
it's the actual superheroes of the film are being presented as a hazard. I think that's quite creative.
It's definitely a different take, even though there's stuff like Civil War that goes into stuff like this, where they feel like the Avengers are quite dangerous and need to be put in check. With this, it's more they fear what they say in the film. They fear something they don't understand, And the point of it, they want to know who is a mutant so that they can, in a sense, control them, because that's the sort of underline they want. That they
Yeah.
want to be able to control these people so that they're not dangerous,
It's just
even though not all of
unfortunate.
them would be
It's
dangerous.
just unfortunate it didn't go much further than that because that could have been developed into
Mm.
something really interesting.
I think I do. Well, I like that how they took the guy. I can't remember what his character's name was, but they take him who is against mutants and saying that he wants them all to come out, and then to turn him into a mutant. I think that was quite interesting. But then sort of drop it like 10 minutes after it happens. He just dies, turns into water.
Mm.
I understand that they needed a reason to say like, why is this thing that Magneto is doing bad? It still felt like that's something that could have been super interesting
Yeah.
to develop.
So anyway, I'll go back to Magneto because I didn't really say anything about him. I just sort of veered off a bit. I think he has some of the best like dark comedic moments in this film.
Oh yeah,
Is taunting especially. I think is very
Yeah.
funny.
he's a very important character, I would say.
And I do think Magneto is fantastic, and I like that there's that sort of you get the scene where like he's inside that machine, but you don't fully see what the guy sees, and until later in the film when it's revealed that he's actually willing to sacrifice himself to give someone else like all the power, which is I think again is a very interesting thing. It's almost like on one hand he's not doing it selfishly, but on another hand he's creating a very dangerous like experiment almost.
Yeah, I just feel like Ian McKellen does such a great job at being this sort of comedic in a sense, but also quite serious character. The way he sort of blends it all together, but you take him seriously as much as all the other main characters.
Yeah,
I think he's just a great actor, and he brings forth this sort of dark sort of person who had a very bad sort of childhood and life, and the way he like takes it out on humanity.
yeah. Obviously, the first scene in the film revolves around him, which surprised me because I don't remember that from the first time I watched it.
No, that wasn't what I was expecting from the beginning of an X-Men film. But I think that's quite nicely done, where you understand what this character has gone through. So like, it's not that he is simply so one-minded bad guy. He's not that sort of character. It's more that he has his mind sort of what with his bad tragedies and stuff like that, which has developed his sort of way of thinking about the world around him. And I think that is very interesting what they do with it. So that you sympathize with him in a sense, but he still does bad things, so you still know that he's not 100% a good person.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think when I'm talking about the tone of this film, there were obviously things that had setbacks, but I think in terms of the positives, I would say Magneto and Professor X are one of the benefactors of this tone because it doesn't make them appear silly at all. Like for example, I would point to a film like Iron Man 1. For the most part, is actually quite a serious film with a lot of jokes, obviously, because obviously Tony Stark's a very comedic character. But in terms of the actual story, it has a lot of serious parts, like deals with things like terrorism and just very, very quite mature ideas. But then the very end of the film with Ironmonger is so cartoonish and just out of place. And this film doesn't ever veer into that with Magneto. It has its comedic moments, but it doesn't go silly. And I like
it doesn't go goofy.
I like how even at the end of the film we still can take him seriously.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think like he's still like as intimidating as he was at the start of the film.
And I think one of the best things I take away from this film is how the end of it makes you feel like this is just the beginning.
Oh yeah, like in a world where like this is like one of the very first successful superhero films, because this was obviously 2000. There wasn't that. This was sort of the one that, in a sense, started it all. Though I would argue Spider-Man was the one that really like really brought the superhero genre into full light. This film is obviously the first, so it's still, and it did quite well at the
Well,
time.
For Marvel certainly.
Oh yeah,
Um,
definitely.
I think DC had a bit of success before this. Not
Oh
too
yeah.
much, but I would say DC did. But Marvel, this is again, for Marvel, this is one of the very first ones where it was like, this is a big, big deal.
Oh yeah, definitely. This is definitely the first real big success for Marvel. So I think this is obviously a success,
Yeah,
and the way they sort of set out where there could be a future like film even from this. They don't sort of bait it. It's more to do with like there could be something with Logan's past, the stuff with
mm,
Professor X and Magneto was very interesting that you might want to learn more about.
yeah,
So they do quite well at setting that all up.
yeah. It's good that there were sequels, because if this was just the only X-Men film and they left it at that, it would be such a shame, because there's a lot of teasing that this film
Yeah,
does. There's a
I would
lot
say
of
so. Yeah.
setup, a lot of setup. But yeah, Magneto was fantastic, and I think the scene where he like he the bloody what's his face his his psychic, what's his name, Sabretooth. The
Yeah.
scene where Sabretooth goes to grab um Senator Robert Kelly, but then he
Yeah.
falls, so Magneto just locks the bars together, so
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
psychic's in prison.
I thought that was quite funny. Yeah.
That was pretty funny. um but yeah, I do think, yeah, I like Magneto a lot. Very good character.
Mhm. Definitely.
And I'm looking forward to rewatching the next films, because yeah, again, like Professor X and Wolverine, I'm left wanting more.
Hmm.
But yeah, then we have the next character who, interestingly, isn't actually considered a main character for the X-Men comics, but has a lot of screen time in this film, especially in the first half. That
Hmm.
is Marie Diancanto. It's a very weird name, aka Rogue.
Hmm. This I don't know how I people will feel about as me saying this, but I wasn't a fan of her performance. I was really I just felt that her acting never convinced me almost at any point.
Mm.
I don't know. I just felt that for me she was probably one of the worst performances in the film. And while there are great performances in this film, and that says a lot about the actual actors in this film, I still felt that she was, while the whole plot seems to revolve around her a lot because she's
Is
the
the
plan for
plan for
Magneto.
Magneto?
Oh,
Oh,
Just continue.
yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Um,
I just
I
felt
just
that
felt she,
her acting was not as good as I hoped it would be for such an important character to the film. It just, I just wish that she was way more convincing than she was, and I wish that she just there was something more to her because I do think that she's probably one of the big negatives I have to say about this film, but it's mainly from an acting perspective, really, because the actress just didn't do that good of a job for me.
I would say it's more than just the actress. I would say there is a fundamental problem with how this character is written, and it mainly
Mm,
comes down to the fact that in the first half she's written like she's going to be the main character, but then
yeah,
about halfway through the film it just drops off, and she becomes
a plot
strangely,
device.
yeah, she strangely becomes a plot device, like the damsel in distress. It's very
Hmm.
odd. Um,
Yeah,
I don't know why they chose to put so much focus on her character, but I suppose, I don't know. It's strange. It's a strange one. Very very unorthodox character.
yeah.
The way.
It feels so weird that when after we have the introduction with Professor X and Magneto, it then goes to her finding Logan. When it, I would have preferred if it started with Logan and then she came into the bar, and that's how they started out the film.
Yeah. In fact, I would almost say that her character is like, it has like a devolution. So where it's at its best at the start of the film and gets worse over the course of the film, which is
Mm.
the opposite of what you want.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I would say
Because
so.
her
I,
first scene is fantastic, like where when it's like, I mean, obviously the actress isn't the best, but in this film, maybe she's better in other films, but in terms of this film, she isn't the best. But in terms of the writing, I really like how it introduces just this normal teenage girl who wants to live her life, but then like as
Mhm.
soon as she gets close to a boyfriend, he starts almost dying
Yeah, goes
because
into a
of
coma
relation.
for 2
Yeah.
weeks and stuff.
Which is it's a very like you can relate to that. You can it's an easy one to be like, oh, that sucks for you. Um, and then I like some of the again, I like some of the writing around her and Wolverine meeting, but
Mm.
obviously it's just the actress Anna Paquin isn't. She just doesn't cut it compared to Hugh Jackman.
Oh yeah.
There's not a level of match there. The chemistry doesn't. It's very one way, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. I would agree with
Um,
that.
I think part of that is to do with the fact that her character is predominantly directed to be quite fearful, and I think the actress
Mm.
overplays it a little bit too much. She just seems too scared, and it's not interesting. It feels a little
Mm.
bit one dimensional where she's constantly scared all the time.
And the actress sort of has this one look that she has as well. I noticed. It's just like it's sort of plain faced and just sort of quite dull
Mm.
as well.
I mean,
I just I
I mean, I wouldn't say it's like Brie Larson bad, but it's
Oh no, but it's still not great. It just I could never either be convinced or interested in this character at
yeah.
any point. I just
Funnily,
wasn't
funnily enough, though,
interested.
I would say in terms of just like when I looked at her face and I was thinking like she actually looks a little bit like Ace, you know, the Seventh Doctor's companion Ace.
Yeah,
She
yeah,
actually
that's
looks very
actually
similar to her, but I
mm,
think obviously the actress isn't as well. I mean, I haven't seen Silver Nemesis, but from what I've seen of Ace, I actually think the actress is quite good.
mm,
Um, but I do also think another problem is that I don't know if she's putting on an accent, but
I don't know.
I got really triggered by her southern accent. It was just quite off-putting. It
Yeah,
sounded fake.
yeah. Yeah, I just felt like the way she delivered lines, the way she sort of was just as a presence, she was definitely one of the worst performers in the film.
Mhm.
And like I said before, there are still really great performers in this film, which, it's tough to sort of follow those. But even then, as just a regular performance, something that nice, simple performance where you can get invested in the character to a certain extent, she was very weak in that department.
Mm.
And it,
Also,
it's it's
also,
quite a big problem when she's quite an important character to the actual plot of the story.
yeah, definitely. I even remember as a young kid being a little bit like, I'm not sure about this character.
Mm.
Seems off. Also, I found a bit of a tangent. I found out today that Andrew Garfield is actually British. I did not
Yeah,
know that.
he's British. Yeah.
I didn't know that, which explains why not only his New York accent in Spider-Man, but his Southern accent in Daleks in Manhattan sounds so shite.
Oh yeah, it's really bad. Like, thank God he actually worked on his accent because it comparing the two, Daleks and Manhattan accent to the Spider-Man films accent, it's so much better, but it's still not great in Amazing Spider-Man.
Well, to be fair, they are different accents.
Yeah, but I'm like that sort of convincing American accent is you can get it so wrong, like he does in Daleks in Manhattan, where it's almost completely silly. Like it's like, come on, it's so blatantly obvious that's a put on accent.
Yeah, but what was I going to say? Oh yes, so yeah, Rogue is a weird character. I also find I think one of the weakest aspects of the film in terms of its writing is all the romances. It's
Mm,
so weird. Like I would say probably the best chemistry between actors in terms of romance in the film is between Jean Grey and Wolverine, but
hmm
everyone else feels off. especially Rogue and Wolverine. That one I don't understand.
Mm.
It feels very odd, especially
I
because
would hope.
especially
I would.
because
Yeah.
he keeps on calling you like kid, like young kid, but then
Yeah, the way I take it, it's more of a carer. What it remind, I think there was something I might have said this in another review about two people not being romantically involved, it being more of a carer. Oh no, I said this in a, I think I mentioned this to you. I said this in a Discord about Clara and 12.
oh
How
yeah,
someone said that they find them, there's something about them that they find romantically interested between the two.
no,
And
I think that was broken in Deep Breath because there was
yeah,
definitely that with
exactly.
Matt Smith's Doctor. There
And
was definitely
that was
that.
my argument for it,
I
that
mean,
how there's no
you
chemistry
couldn't even deny it. Like there were just nude scenes and ass slapping and all that shite.
in the
Um,
episode before that.
but I think in Deep Breath when he says the line "I'm not your boyfriend," it becomes a much more complicated relationship, and there are, to Moffat's credit, a couple of moments with 12 and Clara that are actually quite good.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, as a whole, it's a complete dumpster fire.
Yeah,
Like,
like she says in Into the Dalek, she is the Doctor's carer. So that's sort of the relationship I sort of see with this, where Wolverine is Rogue's carer, more like someone who cares about her. I don't.
mm,
There were weird romantic subtext, I think, especially in the bedroom scene where she gets stabbed. I feel like there's some sort of bit there, just a little bit, nothing too major, but
well, there was also a line where Jean Grey said that she was fancying him, but then there's also the fact that she's also fancying that other guy as well.
mhm, the other kid in the school, yeah.
Yeah, it was very
So yeah,
sloppy, very sloppy.
yeah. So I hope in future films there isn't that much romantic subtext, and it's more just he is someone who cares for her as a person and as a mutant.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know. It was quite. It wasn't as clever as others that I've seen.
Yeah, I would say so.
Mm. It's no Spider-Man 2, is it? Or
Oh
Spider-Man
no.
1. But yeah. Yeah, Rogue is a weird character. They shouldn't have made her so predominant to the story, I don't think.
No, I don't think so.
If she was going
Because
to
then
be
it's
if
such a
she
bulk of the second half of the story as well.
I think another problem is that the fact that she is an important part of the end of the film, but they take away her point of view to focus on the team.
Yeah.
I think that was a mistake because they had built her up to be a big character.
And then sort of disappears from any importance in the
Mm.
second half of the film, where there's like only two scenes with her after the halfway point, you could say.
Yeah, yeah, and like at the very end scene that she's in, when Wolverine gives her the necklace, I'm just like, she's gone so down so many pegs in the last half hour that I don't really care. Probably the last time in the film where she's actually important is the scene on the bus or the train or whatever it
The
is.
train, yeah, the train where she
That's
gets
like the
taken.
last point in the film where she actually feels important, and then after that, it just drops off when as soon as Magneto gets her.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, like you said, the actress isn't the best.
No.
I
It does that. It just doesn't help things where the performer isn't convincing and doesn't get you engaged in the character's story or plot.
mm. I would have much rather had them focus on other characters more.
Yeah, definitely.
Shall we move on from Rogue?
Yeah.
Okay, then we have Scott Summers, aka Cyclops.
Uh, he was such an odd character. It felt like he had quite a lot of importance to the sort of love triangle, which didn't really feel like a triangle at times, really, because it doesn't feel like that Cyclops and Phoenix had like much, chemistry.
They never really showed it at all.
No, they never really showed anything romantic between the two, other than they established that hey, these two are dating. But I do like Jay's. I think his name is Madden or something.
James
Because
Marsden, I think.
High Hearts or something like that. Because the only thing I've seen him in is Westworld season 1, and that's the only thing I've seen him in So I had no idea how far back his career went, and I had no idea it was in uh, X-Men. And he is a good performer, I would say, but he isn't given that much to do other than, hey, I don't like Wolverine.
I would have much rather them have more development for him than Rogue.
Oh, definitely, because I actually think that Cyclops could have been a really interesting character, but
Yeah,
like I said, all they give him is that he doesn't like Wolverine.
yeah, because his superpower is actually very interesting.
Yeah, I like his superpower and the way he has sort of a specialized like headset where he can turn on and off his like goggles where it releases his beam. It's quite an
Mm.
interesting like power that he has, but I just wish they actually had a importance to the story other than this love triangle.
Yeah, well, I mean the fact that you are limited to the fact that you can't look at anyone with your own eyes is actually quite sad. It's
Yeah.
it's it's quite like a horrible thing to live with.
Mm.
So the fact that his character revolves around being jealous of Wolverine is actually quite, I think, undercuts him a bit.
Yeah. I do hope in future films they sort of develop more
Yeah,
upon that. The fact he can't see
yeah.
properly.
And also, you know how I was going back to how I wish this film had more fun, possibly meme-worthy elements to it. He's one of
Yeah.
those characters I feel like if you had just given him a little bit more of that, he would have been like a real fun character to have.
Hmm.
Because it feels restrained. It feels like the comedic stuff with him is only few and far between, and it should have been more. I feel like it would be way more easy to get along with his character if he was cracking more jokes, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Just so, because there's a very much a lack, apart from Wolverine and probably Magneto, there's a very much a lack of comedic relief. And I know that not every film has to have that, but like we said with the film itself, there isn't much fun to be had. So it
Mm.
would be nice if there was a character that you could, in a sense, relate to in like a fun comedic sense. Maybe
Yeah,
just to lighten the tone, I think.
yeah. Again, I feel like a lot of the comedy in this film comes from ad-libbing rather than the script itself, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I would
Feels
say so.
very. It just feels very dried out.
Yeah, I think that's a good description of it. It
Mm.
feels very not dulled down, but I think especially with the sort of way it's the color grading and the sort of like uh dull, like, it feels so extremely serious at times, almost too serious. There's
Yeah,
not much, and there's not much of anything to sort of lighten the tone other than a couple of lines that Wolverine has to like give you a little bit of a chuckle and stuff like that. So that would have been nice to have sort of a tonal lightening, I would
yeah.
say, between
I
characters,
think
especially
I think
Cyclops.
there may have been a mismatch in what the target audience was. I feel like this film would have been great if it was violent enough to where it's mature, but funny enough to where it appeals to like at least young teens.
Yeah,
If you get what I'm saying,
yeah, I do understand. Yeah.
um, because I think that is sort of one thing that this film doesn't quite get right.
Mm.
Um, it may just be because we've seen so many MCU films, so we're sort of conditioned
Yeah.
to expect that kind of humor. Because that is one of the strengths of the MCU is how entertaining the films are because of that.
Yeah.
And I just was watching it thinking, this is with a lot of the scenes, I'm like, this is okay. But if it was more sort of bouncy and fun, it would be so much better.
Yeah. It feels like that, and a lot of people can say it's like you said, we're so conditioned with the MCU. But I also do think that with these types of characters, Wolverine, Cyclops, Storm, and Phoenix, all those four characters, they could have been so much more like feel like more of a family sort of thing. Because that's what I feel
Mm.
like the film tries to go for, more of a family team sort of feel. And obviously, with those kind of like family teams in superhero films, they're sort of bouncing off each other. They sort of make fun of each other, or they sort of have banter between each other, and it doesn't really feel
Yeah.
like they do that.
Well, I mean,
And they sub that for more of a serious thing between
as I
them.
said, I wouldn't make them as serious, but obviously a perfect example of that is the Guardians of the Galaxy because they feel like a family because of the way
Mm.
they bounce off each other.
Mm.
You could even say the Avengers to an extent.
Mhm.
or even sections of the Avengers. Like
Yeah.
you think about like the Winter Soldier crew, so you think about like Captain America, Falcon, and Black Widow together. They feel
They a lot of
like
bouncing between each, especially like Black Widow and Captain America in Winter Soldier. How there are many scenes where they do like just a little quip in a sense, and it's just something to establish their relationship between each other as friends. So
yeah, yeah.
it's,
What do you
it
think?
just would have been nice that if the tone was slightly lifted up, so that there was a little bit more fun to have during the sort of quieter scenes.
Exactly. Um, yeah, this film should have been sillier, just a little bit
Mm.
sillier.
Just a
Not
little
not
bit.
not ridiculous,
Not
but
yeah, exactly. I don't think it should ever have gone to
yeah,
like MCU's version of how they quit every 2 scenes and stuff.
yeah.
Because I feel like that
Like not
again.
like yeah, like you shouldn't have like not like a Ragnarok or a Guardians or
No,
I wouldn't even say like a Sam Raimi level where it's like
no.
Green Goblin, for example. I wouldn't even go that far.
Mhm,
I just yeah, just with those characters, with especially the side ones,
mhm,
not even necessarily the main ones, because I actually think the comedy for like Wolverine and Magneto is fine. It's more
mhm,
just the side characters. I wish the side characters were a bit funnier,
mhm. Yeah,
especially Cyclops.
yeah. It just feels that there's so much potential to be there for certain characters that they don't really develop on.
Mm,
So
yeah. Um. Then we've also got Jean Grey. Um,
mm,
and she's interesting because she's like a she's sort of a doctor, but she's
mm.
also a telekinetic telekinesis is her power.
Telepathy character,
Telepathy,
yeah,
telepathy, yeah. Um, but she's also got like a small amount of Professor X's powers, but then she's
yeah. The
also got
telekinesis slash like sort of telepathy that
yeah.
Professor X has.
But
Yeah,
then she was also involved in the political part at the beginning of the film, and she's also in a relationship with Cyclops, and she's interested in Logan. So
yeah,
there's a lot going on with her in this.
yeah, definitely. It feels like she seems like she's not in sort of the background, but she definitely feels like she isn't one of the characters you really notice in a sense, I think. But she seems like she goes on this like arc, but it's sold within like 2 scenes where like I think they mentioned it quite a few times, like because she has a certain extent of something similar to Professor X, she then goes in this arc where she uses the machine that Professor X uses.
Mm,
So it's quite odd because it
yeah,
feels like it just sort of happens that oh I've never done this before, and then she sort of does it, you know.
yeah. Again, I would have preferred if we gotten more development with her and Cyclops, and had less with Rogue, because I
Yeah.
think she's interesting, and I actually do think the actress is fine. Like, and
Mm.
I'd say she's one of the less. Well, I wouldn't say she's bad like Rogue is, and I think she actually does have chemistry with Hugh Jackman on screen.
Mm.
But again, it's like a lot of the side characters in this film. I just wish there was more. It's not quite. It all just feels so undercooked.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But she is certainly interesting.
Yeah, like I said, there's potential to be had with a lot of these characters, and you can only hope in future films that they do develop on that, make
Mm,
these characters more interesting, make them feel more like actual people in a sense, maybe.
yeah. Um, But I do think the highlight for me for her in this film was just her whole attitude towards Logan.
Mm.
I think the scenes with them together are actually quite well handled.
I would say so, yeah. I think they're some of the sort of better, like sort of smaller scenes in the film. I would say when
Mm,
it sort of well takes its time and it sort of relaxes itself. Those are sort of the better scenes because we learn a little bit more of what actually has happened to Logan. We get little snippets of
mm,
when he's you can only assume he's getting implanted with the male within his skeleton. So
Yeah, yeah. Um, and then the other sort of member of the main team was Aurora Monroe, aka Storm,
mm,
played by Halle Berry. Funnily enough,
mm,
who's another person who doesn't really age either, similar to Patrick Stewart.
no, not really.
She
No.
looks the same in all of her films too.
Mm. So yeah, Storm is she's quite an odd character because I feel like she's the one that doesn't do. I think she does the least amount out of the main team, I would say.
Mm.
So like, even though like people like Phoenix and Cyclops don't do much, they at least have a story with Logan. She doesn't really do anything else other than
Yeah.
she's there within the fight scenes
She's
or
kind
just
of
there as in scenes.
she's kind of the Hawkeye of this group
I would say so.
in a way. And weirdly, she's also a character that actually changes quite a bit. I've noticed. Across the films, she does like not big changes, but there are changes to her, whether that be her look or her character or the way she talks. It's very odd. She's definitely a very underdeveloped character.
Yeah, if it just from this first film alone, I feel like she might be the one that I will have least affection for, just as a character. I just get that sort of feeling.
Mm.
And I hope I'm proven wrong, because I feel like with every single character, there's potential of all of them to go on arcs with each other, or as just separate characters. There is potential there, but I just hope that her, especially because she was the least developed character in the whole story. She didn't go on an arc. She didn't really do anything to challenge herself or anything like that. It felt like she was the most like normal character in the film because she doesn't really develop.
Well, it just really feels like all they only really focus on her superpower, really.
Yeah, and that's about it. And that she's nice, and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
There's nothing really else you can really say because while her effects of her power, the actual special effects are fine. There's not much else to her.
Yeah, I suppose she's got an interesting look, like the white hair.
Yeah, she has an interesting look, but like we say with anything in film or TV, something can look good, but it can still be bloody awful if
Yeah.
it's handled poorly.
Well, Thor: The Dark World looks great.
Mm-hmm. You got Thor: Dark World, and you've got series 11 of Doctor Who. While it looks nice, its stories are very underdeveloped,
Mm.
and then there's so many other stuff you can say that people say, "Oh, that looks incredible," but the story's bad.
Well, the Ghost Monument looks fucking incredible. It looks amazing.
Yeah, but it's very average.
Exactly. And I remember the scene when I think she first appears in the snow scene when when Wolverine crashes the car.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I saw her, I was like, I forgot she was a character. Even though I've seen these films before, I was just like, I forgot she even existed. Okay, we're back. I got very worried there. We lost. We lost. I thought we lost recording. It's fine. Raven Darkholme was the name.
Yeah, Mystique or whatever.
Mystique. Yeah. So I feel like this character. I actually forgot was even in this film. I thought she didn't appear till the second film. And the reason is because even more than Storm, it's literally just her superpower and her look. She has no character. Absolutely no character.
Like she is like, for someone who hasn't watched any of these films, that is definitely one of the characters that you remember because of the way she looks. Like,
yeah, and she's one of the
iconic
coolest,
look.
She's one of the best superpowers in the whole bloody thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's a very interesting character, like in terms of her powers.
But in terms of characteristics, there's literally zero. There's nothing there.
It's a shame, really, because I think she could be like one of the best characters if they did something with her.
In this film, especially,
But she just doesn't have a character.
No.
It's just her superpower.
Yeah. I do think the way they sort of use her powers in the fight scene in the museum, it's very interesting. Like when Wolverine walks off and then he walks back, but it's actually Mystique. It's
Mm.
very interesting.
Yeah,
But
unfortunately, I
yeah,
remember that twist. So when I saw it, I was like, "Oh yeah, it's
mhm,
not him."
yeah, yeah. I do like the way Hugh Jackman sort of acted in that scene. The way like you can tell the difference between them is the way like his facial expressions. It's quite funny.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but yeah, it's
um,
just a shame that she literally doesn't have a character for you to latch onto.
yeah. When I was watching it, I was anticipating a moment like you've seen Rogue One, right?
Hmm.
You know the scene where they kill one of the droids that looks like K2SO, but then he walks around. He's like, "How did you know that wasn't me?"
Hmm.
Anticipating that, like where like Mystique would be attacked as someone else, and then the actual one walks around and says, "How do you know it's not me?" But they didn't do it.
No, they did more so like when you see Storm, and then it cuts away to Wolverine, and
And
Storm
Storm
walks
walks
into the
into the
scene,
scene,
and it's
and it's
more
more
like
like
uh, Wolverine
Wolverine
finds out
finds
that
out
that
that
isn't
that
actually
isn't actually
Storm.
Storm.
It's quite a funny scene, I would say, but yeah, it is. Other than the fight scenes, it's just the same that she doesn't do anything else other than be on Magneto's side. So
Basically.
that's yeah, basically yeah.
Yep.
But
Um,
like, it's a cool effect. It's a cool effect, and it actually looks okay for 2000. But it can look nice. But again, you're not going to get invested in the character if there's no character traits.
yeah, and I think from memory, she gets much more interesting later on because
Mm,
again, I mean, how could she not like unless you just do the same thing again, which would be dumb. Because why would you do
yeah.
that?
Mm, yeah.
Um, but yeah, this cat has disrupted this review about 5 times now. That's okay. But yeah, Mystique again. It's a waste. It's a waste because it's again so much potential.
Yeah. Again, that seems to be the theme where it's okay, but it feels like there's so much potential that could have been there, and they could have really used to make this film really good. But it's just surfaceable.
Mm. It kind of feels like it's not probably not as extreme, but it's kind of like in Spider-Man 3 when they're just like, oh yeah, we're gonna have Venom in this as well.
Mm,
It's very tacked on.
mm,
But unlike Venom, that it actually does make the fight scenes interesting, at least.
mm. Yeah.
But I do think there is a sort of the character of Mystique sort of encourages a reliance on plot twists.
Yeah.
She's like the in this film without a personality. Mystique is basically her entire character is, oh yes, we've subverted your expectations, and
Yeah,
if
you
it's not
thought it was
you,
this person, but it's not.
yeah, and if it's not used in a creative way, and they just keep doing that, it would get stale.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, it's one of those ones that you don't want to mess up because there's a lot of
No.
potential.
No.
But I've got a bit of like PTSD with that character because of Epic Movie.
Mm.
You've seen Epic Movie, right? Have you?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Well, it's one of Adam's least favorite films ever. Um,
I do think he mentioned it on a previous video, though.
yeah, I've seen it probably like 20 times because I used to watch it a lot as a kid because I thought it was
Mm.
hilarious. It's pretty dumb. One of the worst parts I think is that how that character is used in that film.
Mm.
It's very weird, and yeah, so I have like a very strange version of her in my head from that film. So whenever I watch X-Men films, I only think of the Mystique from Epic Movie with played by Carmen Electra. It's just weird.
Mm.
Like it's just even though they're completely different, and it's
Yeah.
unfortunate that my brain instantly thinks of that version of Mystique rather than this one.
Hmm.
Jesus, that ugh. I'm embarrassed to say that I've seen that film so many times.
Mm.
I think Adam's like made a rant about it because it's like a bad spoof where
Yeah,
there's no twist on it. It's just reference.
reference after reference after
Yeah,
reference.
like
Yeah.
there's literally a scene where it like a Borat impersonator appears, and they don't do anything creative with it. It's just Borat. It's just
Mm.
a caricature of Borat, and it's just like just Borat, but another actor, and it's just a joke. It's like, haha, look, it's Borat.
Yeah.
Anyway, um, moving on, we have Senator Robert Kelly, who gets turned into water, right?
Yeah, it
Or was
turns into water. Yeah, he
Hmm.
turns into some weird like he can slide through bars sort of thing. Like he can manipulate his sort of, I guess, sort of matter of his body and stuff like that
I don't know if
or
it was
whatever.
I don't know if it was
But he then
intentional or
turns into
not, but the
water.
but the scene where he tries to stretch his face through the bars is quite funny.
Yeah, I
It's like
think it's kind of like
like
yeah, exactly.
like
It looks very disgusting.
that. For a second, I thought he was gonna get his head stuck beyond the bars.
Mm, yeah, it's very just very much very gross, and then he just turns into a water. But like I said before, there could have been potential for him understanding mutants and stuff like that because at the start of the film he discusses how he wants the all mutants that exist to legally have to expose themselves and stuff like that.
Mm.
So it feels like it's a wasted opportunity that when he turns into a mutant, he dies like 10 minutes later.
Yeah, it's almost like they just wrote him out because they couldn't be fucked using him for the rest of the film.
No.
Like he should have been like the equivalent of an Alexander Pierce, I reckon. Like that,
Yeah.
that
Something
kind of
like that, yeah.
something like that. Again, like his best scene was at the very start of the film, and then he just dropped off.
Hmm.
Then we had Victor Creed, aka Sabretooth.
It's an okay look, but all he ever says is like lie and sound effects.
I feel like Sabretooth, when I saw him, I was reminded of like Taserface from Guardians 2, and I was thinking, this doesn't work as well because it's not a joke.
No. No, it doesn't. I feel like in Guardians 2 is actually quite funny. It's very funny. Taserface, the whole thing.
Yeah.
This, it just feels like, oh, it's a guy that has the powers of a lion, I guess. Or a
Mm.
Sabretooth.
He's the definition of like a henchman.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. He's pretty much, he is like, his character is henchman. It's just a very popular, like, superhero character. So,
Yeah. Honestly, I didn't really feel anything about him at all
no,
whatsoever.
he was just there to be in fight scenes.
Yeah. Oh, and then we had Mortimer Toynbee, aka Toad. Um, Funnily enough, played by Ray Park, who is the same guy who played Darth Maul.
Oh,
Ra-
yeah. Oh,
um,
yeah.
a year before this film, actually.
Mm.
Um,
What a weird, what a weird
yeah,
part to go to after that.
it's a Toad is a weird character. Just very.
I didn't really like Toad. I think I obviously his look is meant to be gross, but it's still not good, nice to look at.
I just don't see what the point of him was. It's just such a
You-
supplemental character.
Again, another henchman, but was meant to be like, oh, I'm gross.
Yeah, it was odd. Big step down from Darth Maul.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And that's saying something because Darth Maul didn't have a character.
But it's still really cool.
Whereas this guy didn't have a character, but he wasn't cool.
Hmm.
Yeah. Like I'd probably say, like, even though obviously we had more problems with characters like Rogue because she was an important part and she was a big part of the film and the actress wasn't well played. But I would say like the downright probably just in terms of just bad, like probably the worst character is Toad in the film.
Mm.
Because like in any scene he was in, I was just like, fuck off.
Yeah, like I don't care.
Yeah. It's just weird. Unnecessary. Like I feel like the comparing them to like the children of Thanos, Because like the Children of Thanos play the same role where they are henchmen, but they are so much more interesting.
Yeah, some of them actually have sort of a character traits, like like Eddie Moore, for example. You get the sort of feeling of what kind of person he is,
Mm.
like quite sadistic and quite like strange. Like you get that feeling.
Yeah,
But with everybody else, you just feel like, oh, that's a henchman and that's sort of it.
exactly. Yeah, not a big fan of the henchmen, really. I suppose the only scenes where I really liked it was just stuff between Magneto and Professor X where they were a part of it.
Mm.
Any other side characters? I suppose there was that boy that Rogue was interested in.
Yeah, but he sort of was just playing into like Rogue running away because it was Mystique.
Mm.
So it's more establishing that, hey, she likes this boy, and then it's used against her to run away for their plans and stuff.
Yeah. There was that cool scene in the school where like there was that guy who created a ball of fire and then the other guy froze it.
Yeah,
And I was just thinking like, I want to see more of that. That's cool.
yeah, it's
But
really
it's just
cool.
so brief. This film
Mm,
needed more magic like that.
definitely, I would say so.
Yeah. Um, are there any other characters you want to discuss?
No, I can't really think of anybody else that was of importance.
Um, Stanley's cameo was very brief. Did you notice it?
I don't think I did.
Wow, is this the first time that you haven't noticed his
No,
cameo?
when was it?
It was when Senator Robert Kelly was on the beach.
Oh yeah, I didn't see him at all on the beach.
Yeah, so it was when it was he walks up the beach and then I think it goes into it like pans into a TV. I think
Right.
he's
Yeah.
just to the right of it and it's at
Uh,
he's like in frame for quite a long time, but he doesn't really do anything. He just stands there.
no, I didn't notice him at all. No.
Yeah, this is probably the worst cameo from him that we've seen so far in these review series.
Yeah, because he's on screen for such a long time but doesn't do anything.
Yeah, because at least with like Spider-Man 1 and 2, he was actually doing something like he saved someone.
Yeah.
It was weird.
Yeah.
I was just like, you can do better than that. Again, this film needed more meme quality, like if they used Stan Lee in an interesting way.
Yeah, definitely.
Like I would have loved if he was a mutant. Like imagine that. That would explain why he's in all these cameos, is that he's actually a mutant.
Yeah.
That would be hilarious.
That would have been funny.
Mm. But I suppose because this was back in 2000, this was before they were actually using him as a proper cameo.
Yeah.
Like,
It was
like
just
the,
more like, hey, look, it's Stanley.
I think like the earliest film in this and that we've reviewed where he's actually used in a really good cameo was Hulk 2003 when he was with alongside original Hulk.
Yeah.
Because like then I think from then on that's when you get like the one in Spider-Man 3 and whatnot.
Mm,
Sort of from then on when he's actually used as a regular cameo and it's actually got quite a bit of significance.
yeah.
But yeah, in this one it was slightly pathetic.
Yeah.
And the plot of this film, yeah, again, it just felt like a lot of setup and there was a lot of teasing, a lot of backstory, a lot of character development, and then it revolved around Magneto's plan and it was stopped, and then that was it.
Yeah. Like it's like I think I said earlier, it's like it's a very easy to follow plot and quite simple. But and
Mm.
the thing is, when you do a simple plot, the way to make that whole story interesting is with its characters. If you're going to do a plot that's quite simple, you need to highlight the characters. If you do something that's quite extravagant in terms of its plot, then that's why you take the characters back a bit
Yeah,
when they're already established. With this, for it being a simple plot, the characters didn't seem, other than like Wolverine, I think is the biggest example. But other than that, it no one else was really properly developed,
mm.
so it wasn't really worth it.
Yeah, and it highlighted some of them in the wrong way, especially Rogue.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Like when you do simple plots, you need to have the characters feel like the forefront of the story. That's what Spider-Man 2 does so well, because the plot itself is very simple. It's such a simple plot, but it's the characters that you get invested in and they develop and they're interested, and it's so interesting the way they interact with each other. That's what makes that film so great, with having such a simple plot. With this, it's a simple plot, but the characters, apart from a couple, none of them get really developed to what you would hope they would be, really.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and there's not much more to say than that, really. It's just it's mainly just, in terms of its positives with the plot, it's mainly just an introduction to this world, I suppose.
Yeah. It tries to do a lot of world building, I would say.
Yeah.
And
I
it
think
does a decent job.
It does a decent job of it, I'd say. It's just, I think this film, I would say, I mean, not as extreme, but there is it has a sort of Captain America: The First Avenger quality to it, where it's everything that it does in relation to the series is really good, but everything that it does in terms of a solo film isn't the best. Because I think this film, where it is at its strongest, is where it is as a series in the X-Men series, but it just by itself lacks a certain something.
Yeah.
Especially I would say the second half, when the plot really kicks into gear, it's not as interesting as when you're learning about the characters.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
And I would especially say the momentum of the film should be much more peak at the point when they're going to the Statue of Liberty. Like there should be like a hype to it, whereas it all just feels like a sequence of events.
Yeah, like the way, like the biggest example of what a team sort of film that sort of has them come back together at the end and it be like, I feel like a big moment is like Avengers. They are disbanded in a sense by Loki, but then they come together at the end. That's the sort of something they should have done in this film, where they go out on a mission, it fails, and they have to bring themselves back up for the finale of the film, and it feels more earned and it's more rewarding.
Yeah, the thing about that though is you just got to remember that film came out in 2012.
Oh yeah,
and before that point, no one had actually done it properly. It wasn't until Joss Whedon finally figured it out, like he finally cracked the code, because it's not easy to do.
No. But that's something that I feel like this film, if it did something like that, this film could have been really great.
Yeah,
like,
and also
characters would have been rich.
And you've also got to remember that the Avengers had 5 films before it to build up to it, which allowed a lot of setup, which then made it a lot easier to assemble them, as opposed to this film, which has to do it all in one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't particularly blame them for getting it not quite right.
No, I think it's just like it's just the power of hindsight, really.
Yeah,
what they could have done.
But I'm glad that they didn't do like a DC and just make it a mess. Because that would have been disappointing as well.
Yeah, like I think this film was like better than most of the DCEU films, by quite a long shot. Because at least with this film, there is potential, but to have future stuff that is actually really good that builds upon this.
I think juice up the comedy. I think this would pass as an MCU film as well.
Yeah, like just like sort of an average like origin MCU film, and this actually could have been one of the better origin films, I would say, because I feel like the weaker films in the MCU are the origin films. I would say there are a couple exceptions to that. I think Iron Man is one that's actually quite good. But there are a couple. I
would say
Doctor Strange is one that's one of the poorer ones, I would say, for an origin story.
I would probably say Iron Man and Black Panther. But then again, the thing is with Black Panther is that Civil War kind of sets it up, and it's the same thing with Spider-Man as well. Civil War. I actually when you think about it, even though Civil War is technically a team-up film and it's the third Captain America film, it's actually a very good setup film for Spider-Man and Black Panther.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
I would say probably for me the best origin film, like that is purely an origin film in the MCU, is probably Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty spot on, that one.
I would say so. Yeah.
But yeah, I think this one again, like just juice up the comedy, and obviously it would be made much later on. If you could have the exact same cast, like, well, I mean, especially for Wolverine, Professor X, and Magneto, juice up the comedy. It could, I reckon, it could be an MCU film for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because again, it has its flaws, but a lot of the flaws are things that you see in other superhero films as well.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, I think this could have been an even better film than that if they really went for it.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
a lot of the time, I just have to tap myself on the shoulder and remind myself that this was made in 2000.
Yeah, for a 2000 like film, this is actually quite good.
Yeah.
I would say. I think just hindsight, when you have to think about it from both perspectives. Like, how would you think about it like now to how would you think about it in 2000? So I think if you think about it in a 2000 perspective, this is actually quite good.
Yeah, you gotta like I would say like compare it to films from like around the time, like The Matrix, Philosopher's Stone, Phantom Menace, like that. Those are the kind of films that were coming out around the time, the franchise films. I'd say comparing it to them is probably easier. Even Spider-Man 1, you could compare it to.
Yeah, because it's within a certain like time frame, so you can still like compare it to that.
Yeah. But yeah, this film is written by David Hayter, Tom DeSanto, and the director Bryan Singer also did a bit of writing on as well. David Hayter is mainly known for his voice acting in anime and video games, but has other experience elsewhere, which I found interesting. So a bit of a hybrid talent. Tom DeSanto worked on the Transformers films. So, that does explain some things. But thankfully, Michael Bay wasn't involved in this.
Oh, no. Oh, this film probably would have been super unbearable if it was directed by Michael Bay.
Yeah. Also, Anthony's not here, but I'd just like to mention that this film was produced by Avi Arad.
Yeah. I've literally actually got it because I've had the film on during this review and the film's just finished and I've paused it at executive producers Avi Arad and Stan Lee. I'm just like, how? I thought I was done with Avi Arad films, but no, he fucking produced X-Man.
Yeah.
Like, it can't escape. We've had a bloody 6-week run with every single one of his films, and now it's still continuing.
Yep, and I'm pretty sure he's involved with Far From Home as well, right? Because it's a Sony Spider-Man film, technically.
Oh yeah, he will be. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is no escaping Avi Arad.
No, you can't escape his grasp.
So when we go to the theaters, it's gonna be like, yep, 5 villains, fucking romance, just why?
Well, I'm seeing it in 6 hours time, so like it'll be very. Is it going to be filled with the Avi Arad goodness? I say in quotations that we've learned from like the last month now, because really it's been a month where you've like, yeah, these are Avi Arad films, but only one of them is actually fucking great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, technically, Spider-Man 1 and 2 were Avi Arad films as well.
No, yeah, I mean, like when I'm talking about like last month, I'm talking about from like Spider-Man 3 all the way up to Into the Spider-Verse. Those are like very Avi Arad films, but only one of them is actually like fantastic.
Yeah, because cramming characters into one film actually works if it's an animation.
Or if it's actually just focused on and they give certain people a certain amount of times, but don't make other characters who have less screen time feel as important. They make them feel like more like fun filler bits.
or if you have Joss Whedon and the Russos working on it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, but as I was saying, yes, I would say that there are a couple of parallels, maybe not quite as many, but when I read that Tom DeSanto worked on the Transformers films, I could actually see that a little bit. There are parallels in terms of the screenplay and the dialogue that reminded me a bit of the Transformers films. And when I say Transformers films, I don't just mean like the first couple, I mean all of them. He worked on all of them, even Bumblebee.
Yeah, like the only Transformers films that I have seen are like the first 3.
I've only seen
parts of 5, I think.
I've only seen the first 2 because I watched the first one. I'm like, oh yeah, that's dumb but kind of cool. And
Honestly,
then I watched the second
5,
one. I was like,
yeah, 5 is bloody awful because it constantly changes the aspect ratio, and that annoys the piss out of me. I fucking hate that so much.
Yeah,
that stuff triggers me. I think I've found because it's so distracting.
yeah. I remember I saw the second one in theaters. I was like, this is so dumb. Like it's so funny and meme worthy because of Shia LaBeouf, but Jesus, it's just weird.
Yeah.
And then I just stopped watching after that. And then I heard from Anthony. He's like, yeah, I mean, because I know that Anthony loves the whole just big bash robots thing. Because he likes, he likes monster films. He likes robot films. It's like a kind of guilty pleasure for him. But from what I've heard, the story just gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Especially the Mark Wahlberg ones apparently are absolute garbage.
Oh yeah, those are bloody terrible.
Yeah. But yeah, I could see a couple of parallels, but not. Thankfully, that it didn't ruin X-Men. And then, of course, we had the direction by Bryan Singer, who also did some of the writing too. He has done films such as The Usual Suspects, Superman Returns, and, funnily enough, Bohemian Rhapsody. That's quite a mixed bag there, isn't it? Because Superman Returns is trash, but Bohemian Rhapsody is apparently amazing. So,
I still haven't watched it, so I wouldn't. I don't know. Because there are people that love Bohemian Rhapsody, but there are also people that don't like it at all.
Oh well, there you go then. I suppose the difference being with Bohemian Rhapsody is you've actually got source material, like an actual real life story to go around.
Yeah.
Like it is a biopic after all. Whereas Superman Returns is just, I only saw it once. I'm never going to see it again unless I have to. It's just terrible. But yeah, I thought the direction worked for a couple of the characters, the main 3 specifically, but overall could have been better.
Yeah, I would say so.
It's just not. It's not charming enough. It's too studio.
No, exactly. It just feels so bleh in terms of a direction. I think really you can sink your teeth into.
Yeah, because at least with like the Sam Raimi films, there was like an interesting like color grade on it, and the direction was quite creative even for the time.
Yeah.
And I suppose Hulk 2003 is creative. I suppose even if it doesn't.
It's creative, but it bashes you over the head with its creativeness.
Yeah, that's true. Whereas with this film, it's quite sort of, it's non-creative, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say really. I suppose probably the best in terms of the cinematography. A lot of the best shots tend to be like the close-ups.
Yeah, I would say so.
The close-ups in this film are really good, but overall, it's not the best. It's just a bit dull.
Yeah.
Probably the the sort of opening Wolverine section with like the cage fighting and the snow driving scenes probably. Oh, and also the concentration camp at the very start as well.
Mm.
I would say those have the most interesting direction, and probably the scenes where he's being operated on too.
Yeah.
And like, but in terms of just exterior and especially like any scene where there's sunlight, it's always dull,
Yeah. Mm.
and there just isn't enough energy to it either. And I just find the script a little bit. It's just a little bit too standard.
Yeah. I think
Lacks
that's a good description of it.
it lacks flavor.
Mm.
Not sure what else to say beyond that.
Mm.
Yeah, there's not much to say. It's just quite generic, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, writing direction is very generic. It's just the cast that really bring that to a better sort of level, but there's only so much they can do.
Yeah. Yeah. Like there's a few scenes that look fine, but again, yeah, like I said, it's just there's no style to it. It's really, I mean, I wouldn't say it's as it doesn't like the studio feel of it doesn't frustrate me like Amazing Spider-Man films do, because that's just really annoying direction. This one isn't annoying. It's just I wish it was better.
Yeah, definitely.
So Bryan Singer, not only those films, but he's also done TV shows. He's most famously for House.
Oh, right, okay.
And the music of this film was done by Michael Kamen. Michael Kamen has done scores such as Lethal Weapon, Die Hard, James Bond films, The Three Musketeers, Mr. Holland's Opus 101 Dalmatians, Event Horizon, The Iron Giant, and unfortunately he died in 2003. I think he was in his 40s when he did.
Right.
So he died early. But he did a lot of films, a lot of famous films.
Mm. I do think it was a good track. I think a good score. I think nothing was bad at all. I don't think. I just think there was nothing massively memorable.
There's
At
a
least
lot
from
of
what I remember.
there's a lot of scenes that feel like they have dead air in them because the score isn't there.
Mm.
It's
I don't think
very
anything was bad. It just felt like there wasn't anything memorable. You just can't really remember anything for any particular scenes.
yeah.
Like what makes some scenes like great is not only the sort of action of the scene, but also the sort of score.
Mm.
That's what I love about the Sam Raimi trilogy. Like there are scenes that you can remember the score for certain scenes.
Oh yeah.
That's when films.
It's
get
what
to
we
that
love
levels.
about Murray Gold. He's an
Mhm.
essential part, especially
Yeah.
of the Russell T Davies era. Doctor
Yeah,
Who.
definitely. You think of a certain scene and you think of a track from a certain episode. You think of it. It's very distinct.
Yeah.
Like even
Like,
if
I-
some scenes use the same sort of music, you still remember a certain scene and that music.
Yeah,
Like
I've watched scenes from the Russell era without the music on it. Like they've basically edited it so that there's no music. It just doesn't feel right.
mm,
But the music adds so much to it.
yeah.
And another thing I had with X-Men is not just the score, but I really don't like the sound effects. The sound effects are so
Yeah.
stock. Like the bell ring in the cage fight it's so fake.
Hmm.
The what's the word for it? I think it's called Foley. Like just the sound effects that are created in the studio.
Yeah.
I
Foley
feel like
sound effects for
I
like
feel like
footsteps, stuff like that. Yeah.
I feel like the Foley on this film was quite weak, and it does feel
Yeah.
like that they grabbed a lot of it from stock music. It didn't feel like the sound effects didn't
Yeah.
feel Foley.
It
They
didn't
felt very
feel natural.
yeah. They felt very
Yeah.
tacked on,
Mm.
and that
Yeah.
is a
I
small
didn't notice anything
detail.
particularly bad, but it definitely wasn't convincing enough.
Well, for me, the bell ringing is the biggest example.
Yeah.
The bell ringing at the
Very.
cage fighting was appalling. I was like, that is
Oh
just
yeah, I
that's the
think
most
so.
fake sound I've ever heard.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would much prefer it if films had like original sound effects.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, if they just made their own sound effects, it makes it feel a little bit more natural. Doesn't feel like it's tacked on.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree
thankfully,
with that.
most films and TV these days are really good with sound design.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that.
Yeah, like
Some do a really good job with their sound effects and make it not seem so like stock sound effects, anything like that. It just felt sounds so natural to the scene and doesn't take you out of it.
hmm, yeah, um, yeah, but yeah, again, like the sound in this film just wasn't particularly memorable, whether it be score or sound effects.
Mm.
It's unfortunate because it's something that a lot of people can take away from a film.
Mm.
Like if Danny Elfman had done the themes for this film, it may be even better. Like it might have been
Yeah.
really cool.
Totally. Yeah.
Like you would expect X-Men to have a distinct theme or like a memorable sort of motif, but not really.
Mm.
I can't even tell you what the theme sounded like at the start of the film. I don't remember it at all.
No.
It's unfortunate.
Mm.
Again, like this, like I said, even though the main cast are actually really good, it's just there's something missing from the magic.
Mm.
Should we move on to the trivia?
Yeah.
Okay. Hugh Jackman took ice cold showers every morning of filming in order to help get into character. This tradition started when jumping into the shower at 5 a.m. before realizing there was no hot water. Shocked awake but not wanting to wake his sleeping wife, he gritted his teeth and bore it. Before realizing that this mindset, wanting to scream and lash out at something but having to hold it in, was the mentality that Wolverine is in constantly. He then made cold showers his Wolverine preparation routine for each movie featuring the character.
That's good method acting and it's a good preparation for a character.
Yeah,
Because cold showers suck.
yeah. Again, it's like we always see on YouTube, like there's people like, oh, they're so good for your health. It's like, yeah, but fuck that.
Mm.
It's horrible, absolutely horrible.
Mm.
And almost like if you're staying there too long when it's cold, it makes you feel sick.
Mm.
There's nothing like a good hot shower.
Mm.
But you know, method acting.
Mm-hmm.
It's better than what bloody Jared Leto did for Suicide Squad.
Yep.
What's it? He like sent a pig in the mail or something. Oh dear. The scene in the train station where a young boy smiles at Cyclops and he smiles back was unplanned. The boy was a huge X-Men fan and Cyclops was his favorite. The scene originally called for Cyclops to look at the train schedule, but according to director Bryan Singer, the boy could not stop smiling at James Marsden. Finally, during one shot, Marsden just looked back at him and smiled, much to the boy's delight. Bryan Singer liked the idea so much he kept it in the movie and told the actress playing the boy's mother to react the way she did.
Mm. That's
That's,
good. That's a nice
yeah,
little moment.
yeah. Like the film needed more of those moments, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Wolverine's line, "What do they call you, Wheels?" was an ad lib by Hugh Jackman. Like one of the best lines in the film.
Yeah, I love that. And like you said, we need more of those moments because that's actually really funny. I
Because
actually laughed a lot.
the original line was, do they call you, Baldy?"
That would have been just as funny though.
Yeah, like,
But Wheels is like that's very funny. I love
yeah.
that.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. Again, like you said, there needs to be more of that
Mm-hmm.
because this film hints at greatness.
It
Just
really
doesn't
does.
quite
Yeah.
get there. Shortly after accepting the role of Magneto, Sir Ian McKellen was offered the role of Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings, which originally he had to decline.
Wow.
Uh, Imagine that. Lord of the Rings without Ian McKellen.
Mhm.
Travesty. He spoke to director Bryan Singer about his interest in making The Lord of the Rings, and Singer agreed to rearrange the movie's shooting schedule so that McKellen would finish his scenes by the end of '99, freeing him up to travel to New Zealand in January 2000, where The Lord of the Rings had begun production since October '99. It's great because
Mm.
Bryan Singer saved Lord of the Rings because he is such an essential part. Like Gandalf,
Mhm.
no other actor could have played that character.
Mhm.
I'm glad that he got to do both.
Yeah. Good run though. Two perfectly cast as two different characters. So
Yeah,
that's a good
it's
run.
it's funny because at the exact same time he was also being considered for Dumbledore as well.
Hmm.
So
Ooh,
imagine if
that
he
would have
got
been that would have been
imagine
good.
imagine if he got all three. Like imagine how busy he would have been.
Yeah, he would have been super busy for the next 10 years.
Well, I mean, Philosopher's Stone and Fellowship of the Ring were filming at the exact same time,
Yeah,
so he would have had to have like an insane schedule.
yeah.
But no. Um, but had there been like a slight difference in years of when these films were made, maybe he could have played all three.
Uh, that he would have been perfect casting choice for Dumbledore, I think.
Mm. He probably would have been able to fill the gaps that both Richard Harris and Michael Gambon lacked.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if would and there would obviously because there's a difference between the two actors of Richard Harris and Michael Gambit, it wouldn't have felt especially between two and three, like two completely different characters.
Yeah, because like Richard Harris is characterized well and he's soft spoken, but he doesn't have the energy of Dumbledore
Hmm.
from the books. He's very frail. Michael
Mm.
Gambon is full of energy and charisma, but he's not characterized well. Um,
No.
and the real Dumbledore from the books is somewhere in between those two, like the best of both those actors. I feel like Ian McKellen would have been a good choice because he could have been able
Mm.
to do both.
Yeah.
Um, Neither Patrick Stewart nor Ian McKellen knew how to play chess during filming, so a chess master had to come in to teach them.
That's funny. It just feels like those two actors you would feel like they would know how to play chess just from like the characters they play. So that's quite funny to think about.
Yeah. Patrick Stewart was the first actor to be cast as a mutant, and in fact had been a fan favorite for the role of Professor X since the '90s.
Perfect casting.
Mm. So, to celebrate her last day on set, Rebecca Remigian Stamos, who had plays Mystique, I believe, brought in a bottle of tequila, which she gave to her fellow casting crew during a break in filming. Unfortunately, that day she happened to be filming the Wolverine and Mystique fight scene, and she threw up blue-colored vomit from the chemicals in her makeup all over Hugh Jackman.
Uh,
Gross. Rebecca Remigian. I can't even say her name. Rebecca Remigian Stamos. Is that her name?
I'd assume
Rem-
so.
Remigian. Her makeup as Mystique consisted of 110 custom designed prostheses, which covered 60% of her body and took 9 hours to apply.
Jesus.
She could not drink wine, use skin creams, nor fly the day before filming. Because it would have caused her body chemistry to change slightly, causing the prosthetics to fall off. 9 hours.
Jeez.
That's insane. It's like 3 times what Christopher Eccleston had to go through for Malekith
Hmm.
or like Drax.
Like, that's a whole day shift for just a regular job. That's a whole shift.
Yeah.
Jesus.
It's like getting a tattoo done.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like that's like a whole day. Like meat. That's the meat of a day. Like if you were like up at like, say 9 or 10, 9 hours later. Now it's evening, and now you're like end of the day. That's how long that is.
I mean, you would think that they would be able to get multiple artists in to make the job quicker,
Hmm.
but I suppose it has to be perfect.
Yeah.
Didn't they didn't they find a quicker way to do it like in the middle of the MCU? That's why Drax
Yeah. Like
is like
it obviously with like time, it obviously gets better developed, so it would be much quicker. So I think it's the same because I know that Jennifer Lawrence plays as her Leia in the series, so I'd assume it wouldn't take now 9 hours to do it.
mm, that's insane.
Yeah.
It's like 2 of our videos.
Yeah.
In order to keep her look a secret, Rebecca Remigian Stamos, I think I got it right that time, had to sit in an isolated windowless room when not required for shooting. She says, I had almost no contact with the rest of the cast. It was like I was making a different movie from everyone else. It was hell.
Hmm.
That sounds miserable. 9 hours to apply your costume and you can't even contact people and see them.
Right.
What a hard job. And especially considering that she barely even had a character as well. It's a
Hmm.
shame. In the comics, the X-Men wore a distinctive blue-gold uniform, but the filmmakers revised the uniform to black leather suits. Tom DeSanto explained that the test designs of the X-Men in their blue-gold outfits were unsuccessful, and Bryan Singer noted that durable black leather made more sense for the X-Men to wear as protective clothing. Despite support from Stan Lee and Chris Claremont, many fans were upset about the change in costumes. So Bryan Singer added dialogue referring to the issue when Wolverine complains about the uniform. Cyclops replies, "What would you prefer, yellow spandex?"
Hmm.
Would you have preferred if they actually did have the yellow spandex or not?
It would have been a bit more like cheesy, I think,
Yeah, it
and it
would have
might have
been.
not fit the tone
No,
that they
definitely
were
not.
going for.
But I
So,
reckon, I reckon if they had changed the tone of the film, they could have gone with it.
hmm, yeah, maybe.
But I suppose it doesn't really. When you think about Logan's character in the context of this series, it probably doesn't fit him that well.
No.
But even as a kid, when I saw them in the black leather, I was like, that just looks a bit generic to me.
Mm, yeah, it is quite generic. So,
Like, I mean, you look at the MCU now, like Thanos looks completely ridiculous, but he is one of the most serious characters out there.
hmm, yeah.
Most of the eye effects were achieved by the actors and actresses wearing special contact lenses. However, the cast found the lenses uncomfortable and dangerous to wear. Rebecca Romijn Stamos could only wear her Mystique lenses for 1 hour at a time and only had 10% vision. Tyler Mane kept his saber-tooth lenses in for too long and ended up temporarily blinded for a day. And Halle Berry wore her opaque white storm lenses only once, found them unbearable, and insisted she have CGI for her eyes.
Mm. Yeah, but
But
then like wearing contacts is really like horrible to wear for like special effects and makeup.
yeah, well, I mean, contacts that aren't even meant to be used, like, because contacts, for example, like actual contact lenses are meant to be used for people that wear glasses, and
Hmm.
they're much cleaner and much better for you than wearing these contact lenses, which are just used for makeup, I suppose.
Hmm.
Um, and they are dangerous. If you don't use them right, they are dangerous.
Mm.
Imagine being temporarily blinded for a day. That would be really scary.
Yeah.
Just because of some film that you were
Mhm.
on. Ooh, Hugh Jackman got his testicles caught in a harness after a 6-foot jump off the set Statue of Liberty.
Oh, jeez. Ugh.
Ooh. No. Poor bastard. There were 3 types of Wolverine claws: plastic, rubber, and steel. More than 700 individual claw blades were used by Hugh Jackman and his 4 stunt doubles.
Mm.
700. This is the only movie where Storm has a Kenyan accent, indicating her nationality from the comics. For all of the other installments, Halle Berry used her own American accents. I was going back to what I was saying before about how she changes from film to film.
Mm.
It reminds me of Age of Ultron, how like Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver had the Russian accents, but then in Civil War she's American.
Mm. I think with that, it makes a little bit more sense because she's at that point had been living in America for a couple of years, and you sort of adapt to the like accent. With Storm, you can only assume she's been there for years and still has that accent in this film. But
Hmm.
then next film, she then gets American, so that doesn't make much sense. That's the sort of reasoning you can have for accent changes. So, but yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Um. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, there are accent changes that feel much more natural than others.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, and then there are some that are just too sudden and make no sense.
Hmm.
Um, James Marsden, despite being nearly 6 feet tall, had to wear platform shoes to appear taller than Hugh Jackman, who was 6 feet 2 inches. These platform shoes can be clearly seen as Cyclops scales at the wall at Liberty Island. He also had to stand on an apple box to appear taller next to one of the boys at the train station. As a prank, Tyler Main set up an apple box in Marsden's trailer bathroom with a note, "This is so you can reach your sink."
Hmm.
So yeah, Cyclops is actually meant to be a lot taller than Wolverine, but
Yeah.
because he looks so small, it doesn't feel the same. It feels like Wolverine's much taller because he is
Yeah.
in the film.
Hmm.
And it's funny because that goes back to we were saying before about how Robert Downey Jr. is perfect casting for Iron Man except for his height because he's not tall enough. Where Hugh Jackman is perfect casting for Wolverine except for his height because he's too tall.
Hmm.
Wolverine's meant to be like 5'3", whereas Hugh Jackman's
Yeah.
6'2".
Yeah.
It's just like Tom Cruise plays Jack Reacher, who's meant to be like 6'6", and he's like 5'6".
Mm.
And remember, like, what was it? Robert Downey Jr. had to wear platform shoes in the Avengers, so he was taller than Pepper Potts.
Hmm.
And like every scene they have in Iron Man 3, he's sitting down.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
Pretty sure it's the same in Endgame as well.
Yeah.
Oh well. Bryan Singer turned down this movie 3 times, believing that the comic books were unintelligent literature. However, after reading the X-Men comics and watching the X-Men animated series, he found the story's themes and prejudice and discrimination compelling, and finally agreed to do a live-action movie.
Mm.
It almost seems to me like he maybe wasn't the right person for the job.
Hmm. Mm. Maybe.
Not sure. I mean, he did. I mean, obviously casting he did well, but in terms of the tone,
Mm.
would have been better to have a different director, I think.
Yeah, probably.
Although Rogue had been a relatively minor character in X-Men lore, Bryan Singer made Rogue a pivotal character in this movie because her ability to drain people and nearly kill them was the most symbolic of alienation. So
Mm.
he chose to make her more of a major character because of the theme of the film, I suppose.
Yeah, but then it sort of dropped though halfway through the film when she gets taken away though.
Yeah, unfortunately. I already talked about that. Ian McKellen was initially reluctant to accept the role of Magneto, but was convinced to accept it when he saw the costume.
Mm. It is a cool costume.
It's funny how there's like these reasons people take these roles, like how Tom
Mm.
Hardy took Venom for his kid, or something like that.
Mm. Yeah, so everybody has different reasons for it.
Yeah. Or was it Christopher Eccleston took Malekith for the money only?
Yeah.
Hugh Jackman's physique looks slightly different in different scenes because he was cast 3 weeks after principal photography had started and kept working out extensively while shooting continued. So yeah, 3 weeks into filming, they cast Hugh Jackman. That's insane.
Yeah. Those 3 weeks must have been anything to do with like Magneto, probably. You can only assume because that's like those are the only scenes apart from a couple in the X-Men house
Well, they would
that
have to
don't
be
involve him.
that would have to be Magneto because they filmed all of his stuff first.
Mm.
Bryan Singer's first choice to play Wolverine was Russell Crowe, but he turned it down. Other actors were considered for the role were Mel Gibson, Aaron Eckhart, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Viggo Mortensen, Edward Norton, uh, Bob Hoskins, Keanu Reeves,
Oh, back then. Oh.
and Gary Sinise. Doug Reese Scott was cast. Doug Reese Scott was actually cast, but then he had to drop out due to scheduling conflicts with Mission Impossible 2 and was injured in a motorbike accident. Finally, Crowe suggested his friend Hugh Jackman, who auditioned him and had him cast as Wolverine shortly after filming began, even though Jackman later stated that it took him a few weeks of filming to find the correct performance.
Mm.
That's insane. What? Mel Gibson, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Viggo Mortensen wouldn't have been able to because Lord of the Rings.
Mm.
Edward Norton.
He's back.
Why? why? Why did they want him to be a superhero? I don't know. Keanu Reeves in 2000? I don't think so.
No. Now maybe, but even then, he's I think he'd be better as a different character.
Yeah. I'm not actually sure who I think would be a good Wolverine aside from Hugh Jackman, honestly. Like, they kind of hit magic with that one.
Tom Hardy would probably be the only one I could consider.
I suppose. But even then, it's like, as soon as you've seen Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, it's like no one else can be like that. It's like
No.
it's like if you said to me like now, like, oh, who would you cast as Iron Man if it wasn't Robert Downey Jr.? I'm like, I can't.
No.
I don't know. I can't think of anyone who would be Iron Man.
Like, there's a reason why in the whole of the X-Men, the only one they haven't recasted, or one of them and they haven't recast, is like Wolverine.
And it's
At
the
least
same
everybody
thing
else
it's the
has
same
been
thing
recasted.
how they haven't recast J. Jonah Jameson either, because
No.
only J.K. Simmons can play that character.
Mm.
The snow in the Canadian sequence where Wolverine and Rogue are accosted by Sabretooth was all fake, as it hadn't snowed in the area for some time. Fake snow. Wolverine does not kill anyone in this movie.
Oh wow.
Makes a few stab wounds, but he doesn't kill anyone.
He almost kills someone, but they can magically heal themselves by touching his face.
Yeah. That was one of the weirdest scenes in the film, actually.
Yeah, I remember that scene It's one of the things that I think I've seen glimpses of throughout my life, not knowing the actual context of the scene.
Hmm. Joss Whedon wrote a draft of the script, but it got rejected because, according to Whedon, it had quick-witted pop culture referencing tone,
Oh
which
wow!
didn't fit the X-Men, apparently.
But
Only
that's
two,
what the Avengers is, so
yeah, only two lines of dialogue from his script were used in the final movie. The exchange between Cyclops and Wolverine when Cyclops suspects he is Mystique. That, of course, would be the "You're a dick."
that's
And
funny though. That's really funny. I like that bit.
Storm's statement about what happens to a toad when it is struck by lightning.
Okay, that one was a bit less. That was a bit underwhelming, but the
Mm,
first one, that one was really funny.
yeah, yeah. That so apparently Joss Whedon's original script was full of that.
Hmm. That would have been fun.
Yeah, apparently it was too fun. Apparently, with this is supposed to be a serious
Gotta be
film.
serious. It's gotta be serious.
Oh dear. Kirsten Dunst, Sarah Michelle Gellar, and Christina Ricci were considered for the role of Rogue. Natalie Portman turned down the role as well.
I think all of them would have been better than the actress that actually had the role.
Yeah, I'm just sick of seeing Natalie Portman at this point. Like
Yeah, she's in
she's
everything.
she's always like one of the worst parts of my favorite franchises.
Yeah, she might have done an okay job in this film, maybe, but she was in the midst of the shithousery that was the prequels.
Yeah, and she was also in the bad Thor films.
Hmm. Well, she was in Endgame, even though it was reused footage.
Yeah, it's funny how like Endgame is arguably Jane Foster's best film because it's a joke.
But but it's footage from Dark World,
Yeah,
like that they didn't
although
use.
although I will say, the reference to Jane in Age of Ultron is one of my favorite lines in that film.
Yeah,
Oh, Jane's best.
and in Endgame, it's great as well.
Yeah,
Thor sobbing over it.
like
Fire, little fire fling.
imagine if at like the start of the MCU, like before anyone's even seen any of the films, but they've read all the comics.
Hmm.
You say to them, in the big finale of the Infinity Saga, where they are tracking down stones that Thanos was looking for, you're gonna have Rocket from Guardians of the Galaxy pull a stone out of Jane Foster on Asgard in the past with Fat Thor.
Reclaiming his original hammer, thinking he's now worthy. Which transitions into Peter Quill dancing in the cave in Guardians of the Galaxy, but you hear him singing to himself like a lunatic. What a crazy film.
And Iron Man almost killing himself in a parallel universe. And he's fixed by accident. Oh dear. What a wonderful film.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like we've been spoiled by the MCU, like with the
We have.
Avengers films. That's why
Yeah.
a lot of these films feel dull, because like
Yeah.
films like Avengers and Infinity War and Endgame are just stellar on every level,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the stuff that's come before it just doesn't compare. Aside from like a
Yeah.
couple of very very good films like Spider-Man 2.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think Kirsten Dunst could have been okay. I just don't think I would obviously don't want to get rid of her from Spider-Man.
No, because she absolutely would have been cast for MJ. I don't think if she did this film. I just have a feeling it would have been one of those situations where they wouldn't want to recast someone as a different character in another
Yeah,
franchise
yeah,
2 years later.
but if we forget about Spider-Man and just look at it as a vacuum, I think she could have been okay as Rogue. She's a much better
I, I
actress.
definitely, I definitely would have think she was better. She would have been better.
I'll be interested to see what she's like on screen with Hugh Jackman as well.
Yeah, like comparing it to how she's on screen with Toby Maguire.
Mm. Hugh Jackman did most of his own stunts. One day he almost impaled a cameraman with his claws.
Jeez.
Dangerous stuff. This was Bryan Singer's first sci-fi movie, so to gain a better understanding of practical and digital visual effects, he visited the production sets of Titanic and The Phantom Menace.
Mm.
28 drafts of the screenplay were written by several different writers.
Jesus.
28.
And this was the best one, apparently.
It was the one that the director liked.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'd be interested to see like a version of this film with the Joss Whedon script.
Mm-hmm.
Because it probably
It'll
would have been
be,
silly, but like it would have been fun.
yeah, it would have been way more fun than it was.
Yeah, like imagine this film, but like the Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
The opening Nazi concentration camp scene involved 300 extras.
Jeez.
To get to get the charge in his hair, Tyler Mane was attached to a 5 million volt electrostatic generator.
Hmm.
Magneto's fortress is a life-size set that took 2 months to build from scratch.
Jeez.
Definitely looks convincing,
Yeah. But we don't spend that much time there.
unfortunately.
I think it's like one scene or at least two scenes, isn't it?
Yeah. Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, and Ethan Hawke were considered to play Cyclops.
Hmm. Some of those might have been interesting.
Ben Affleck's quite
Ma-
tall, isn't he?
Yeah, he is quite. Ben Affleck playing another semi-blind character.
Oh dear.
He could have been Cyclops, Daredevil, and Batman.
What about Matt Damon?
I do like Matt Damon. I don't know how he would have been in this. I don't know.
Mm. Yeah, hard one, that one. Pro wrestler Kevin Nash was offered the role of Sabretooth. Um, it would have been like another Bonesaw if that happened.
Yeah, but
Um,
he would have been boring because Kevin Nash is boring and so is Sabretooth.
yeah. But he turned it down due to schedule conflicts. He would later schedule conflicts. He was with WCW at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He would later take on another Marvel villain role as the Russian in The Punisher. Michael Jackson wanted to play Professor X.
He wanted to play Professor X and he wanted to play Spider-Man. Those would have been bad. Like, you're not an actor. It would have been terrible.
Michael Jackson as Professor X. Oh dear, that would have had horrible connotations now. Like
Oh yeah.
Professor X, who's a teacher who, like,
Can see anybody whenever they are.
keeps kids, in his living space. That would have been not aged well at all.
No.
In fact, even for the time, wouldn't have been a good look because
No, it wouldn't.
obviously there was still,
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, it doesn't matter whether or not if their allegations are right or not. It doesn't really matter. It's still like
It's still
because
awkward.
there's something. It's still exactly.
Well, I mean, like I have absolutely no opinion on it at all. Like, I don't care.
No, I don't
But
either.
but even then, when I watch Guardians of the Galaxy and his songs come on, I'm just like, oh.
I sort of whenever I hear, I just sort of take myself and just listen to the song itself because it's still good. So I don't think about the artist when it's something like that.
Mm,
I
yeah,
just think about the song.
yeah. But sometimes you just can't help it. Like
Yeah.
the media just ruins it for you, regardless of
Mhm.
what you believe.
Yeah.
Visual effects supervisor Mike Fink claims to be dissatisfied with his work on this movie.
Mm.
I can see why. I think it's for the time the effects are okay. It's just I think the design of them aren't particularly creative. there's that white sort of thing, like I don't know what you call it, like a blanket or like a beam that Magneto produces that I don't think looks particularly good.
No.
The special effects in this film are quite boring.
It's very hit and miss.
Yeah. Like anything to do with the claws is great though.
Oh yeah, that all looks great.
But I am aware that the special effects get much better with these films.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but it's always going to get better in some way just due to technology and time.
Yeah. The X-Men film franchise is not part of the MCU yet.
No.
Some people want it to be.
It won't be, because then nothing would have made sense.
Yeah, but what about the multiverse?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it can't be in the exact same universe. It can be part of like the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse, the MCM.
The MCM.
That's what if they do if we find out in Far From Home if the multiverse is a real thing and it's not a plot device for Mysterio, then it will most probably be called that, or at least people will call it that, the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse. Because it won't be one specific universe.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure Avi Arad wants all of his Spider-Man films to be part of it.
Avi Arad wants every film to be linked to each other.
Yep, and he's like, "Oh, we need to have the MCU do Sinister Six."
Quick, establish every single Sinister Six character in the next Spider-Man film, and then we can make good Sinister Six film. It's Marvel Studios, so it would be great. People love Marvel.
Ah, money, money, money. Venom, Venom. Oh, where's Anthony? Why is he not here? Anyway, give your conclusion and a rating out of 10 for X-Men.
For a first viewing, this film definitely isn't bad, and I think at the time in 2000, this would have been, I think it was considered a really good film. But I think just judging it as a film itself, just from my experience, I still think there's a hell of a lot missing from this film. It's competent and it's simple, but the characters, like I said before, when you do a simple plot, you need to develop your characters immensely, and this film just doesn't do that with a lot of its characters. There are characters that are great, and it's probably the three main characters of Magneto, Professor X, and Logan, and that's pretty much it. Effects hit and miss, can be desired for. Writing is a bit all over the place, and the plot seems to like be all over the place as well, with Rogue being important for the first half and important in the second half, but her character like on-screen presence is dropped significantly in the second half. And I think this film, I think we've mentioned it a lot, it has a lack of fun with it. Very serious, which can work well for a film, but I think for a simple plot like this, it just doesn't work. So I might be a bit harsh on it and might give it a 5.5 out of 10.
Wow, so on par with Thor 1.
Yeah.
And what did you give Venom?
I gave that a 4.5.
Right, yeah, because I gave Venom a 5.5 and Anthony gave it a 5, right?
Yeah.
I think that was
I rated it the lowest, yeah.
I see. So so you think this film is on par with Thor?
Yeah, not particularly bad, but it's not something I'm ever gonna probably willingly watch again, because there's not a lot of fun to be had with it, because it's very serious. Much like Thor, very, very serious. With at least with Thor, there are a few moments that are quite comedic, like with Thor adjusting to the world for the first time. But other than that, it's very serious.
Okay. Yeah, so I think I liked this film a bit more when I was younger, but I was always a little bit off about it. And I always remember this being like, I need to watch this one so I understand what's going on, but it's not the one that I ever look forward to. that make sense?
Yeah.
I think for the time, it's actually quite. It has a lot right.
Yeah.
Especially with its casting. But I do think that looking back on it, there are things about it that are missing. There's a lot of studio issues, and the overall direction and tone didn't match what I would like to see in a film like this. Um, yeah, it's held up by pure coincidence of casting some very, very good actors, but overall the story wasn't that interesting. And a lot of the side characters are quite forgettable, and a couple of the performances aren't the best. But there are some fantastic ideas in there that I just wish were fleshed out more.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to give it a 6. I'm probably going to give it a 6. Because, yeah, I think 6 is probably where I'll put it. Maybe. I was thinking maybe 6.5, but again, I'm thinking this film for me is probably like on a similar. I was thinking similarly to like Captain America: The First Avenger, maybe slightly higher, maybe slightly lower. I'm not 100% sure. It's
I would
weird.
say First Avenger has more impact on the MCU, I think.
But
And
I
even with
also,
its ending as more impactful, I would
yeah.
say.
But on the contrary to that, I also think First Avenger is a bit more boring as well.
Mm.
And then I'm comparing to say like something like Iron Man 2. I think Iron Man 2's plot is a lot sloppier than this one, and the casting isn't as good, but it is at least fun.
I would I think I agree with the with what I meant, but I would probably disagree with First Avenger being a bit more boring. I find that quite more entertaining than this film, just in just regular viewing. But I do understand what you mean.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I think this film could had the potential to be even better than it was. I think it has a
Yeah.
lot of potential because
Oh
there
yeah,
are
definitely, definitely.
because there is greatness within it. But I think
Oh yeah.
6 is probably a comfortable score.
Mm.
Probably a high 6, not a low 6. Because if it was a low 6, it would be like Ant-Man and the Wasp level, which I think I would probably say I like it more than that film because at least this one really interests me on a certain level, whereas with Ant-Man and the Wasp, it was kind of just a throwaway. Fun,
Yeah.
but it wasn't really that
It
substantial.
wasn't important to at the time. It was very. I think we mentioned this before with the whole Infinity War Endgame sort of structure. Every film that came in between them didn't feel important,
Yeah,
and you can't get invested in something if you don't think it's important.
yeah,
So that's the thing with like Far From Home. Now people are going to be more excited for just the solo films again, unlike Captain Marvel and Ant-Man and the Wasp, because those suffered because of the wait between Infinity War and Endgame. I would say. I think they put a bigger fact into that than people realize.
yeah. And unfortunately, this is not encouraging the fact that I gave it a 6 and you gave it a 5.5, because this is generally regarded as one of the better ones,
Yeah,
which is unfortunate.
yeah.
But I
It's
guess we'll have
not a
to wait to
great
see.
start. I don't think it's a great start for something like because obviously this is my first time viewing it in full for the first time. For me personally, I don't think it's a fantastic start. While not bad, and there are parts of it that I really, really liked, and certain actors and characters I really, really liked. Just judging it as a film itself for the future of the franchise, it is not a good first impression.
Yeah, and I was thinking in context of the time, but even then, when I compare it to other films at the time, it's still lacking.
Hmm.
Like I would much rather watch Spider-Man 1. I'd much rather watch Philosopher's
Oh
Stone.
yeah, thousand times,
Um,
a thousand times, yeah.
and I even though it's crap, I'd still rather watch Phantom Menace. Which it's Phantom Menace is a worse film than this,
Oh
but
yeah,
in terms of entertainment, I would rather watch it than this.
yeah.
Most
It
films that came
yeah.
out around the time this time, I'd rather watch.
You'd rather because there are films that are worse, but you can have fun with to an entertainment extent. When
Yeah,
something is average, but it's not averagely, oh,
yeah,
that's quite decent, and I quite
yeah.
enjoyed that. It's like that's quite average. I
Interesting.
find quite boring.
Interesting. I gave X-Men and Spider-Man 3 the same score when they have completely opposite problems.
Mm.
because Spider-Man 3 is very entertaining but has a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Whereas X-Men isn't that entertaining, and the issues aren't too bad, but they just make the film less engaging, less interesting.
Yeah. And there are actual bits of Spider-Man 3 that are important to the franchise and are also important to that film. There are actually moments that I actually really like. There are themes that I really like. With this, it feels like there are characters I really like, but the themes and the tones don't match up with anything else.
Yeah, and I reckon if this was handled by someone more enjoyable like Joss Whedon, this could have been a great film. Just too serious.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So, anything else we want to say about X-Men at all?
Like I said, just first impressions. I think it could have, with its potential, I think it could have been so much more. I think that's the biggest thing for me. It could have been so much more because there's so much stuff that they could have done to make this a really great first impression for not just me, but for even people at the time watching it to get invested in these characters. And it doesn't do much to make you even feel even remotely interested in some of the characters. It's just the main three that seem like you get the most interested in because of their backstories.
I think the success of the film at the time mainly comes down to the cast and also the fact that it's something new, something that we hadn't really seen before.
Yeah.
I'd probably be more forgiving of this film had I not seen so many superhero films now.
Yeah.
And I think I was more forgiving of it when I watched it when I was younger as well. Like, when I was younger, I probably would have given it like a 7, maybe. But now I think it just doesn't quite hit the mark with its story.
No.
But yeah, obviously next time we're going to be doing Spider-Man Far From Home to conclude the Spider-Man series and to sort of wrap up the MCU reviews for Phase 3. So that should be good.
Yeah, like Far From Home is going to be the wrap-up of the Sony Spider-Man films and the MCU catch-up, basically.
It's quite a big one.
Mm.
And I'm hopefully, like, I can't guarantee anything, but I really want to finally have a video where it's you, me, Anthony, and Adam all in one, because that still hasn't happened yet. Somehow, through all the MCU films that we did, we never had all 4 of us on one video.
We had moments where we could have, but
almost endgame. But Anthony fell asleep because of his jet lag. He was supposed to be on it. But if we get all 4 of us on that would be amazing.
Yeah, it'd be really good.
But yeah, we'll have to wait and see for that. So next week will be Spider-Man Far From Home. And then the week after that, we'll continue X-Men with X2, X-Men United. Should be interesting.
Yeah.
So anything else you want to say before we wrap up the video?
No, I think I've said everything.
Okay. Well, we will see you all next time.